If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 101, Accident. Next to the Frenzel mansion, by the courtyard pavilion, Riesel was practicing swordsmanship when he suddenly received a message from a servant. "Someone wants to see me." Riesel furrowed his brow but didn't disrupt his rhythm. He maintained a steady breath, simultaneously dancing with his sword. "Why, yes." The servant replied nervously, lowering his head. Watching Riesel continuously spin the air, his wooden sword dancing like a whirring whirlwind, exuding an imposing aura, the servant unconsciously swallowed his saliva hard. "I'm not available." Riesel continued practicing, his voice unwavering. "Just tell them I'm busy practicing swordsmanship." With that, he spun the wooden sword in his hand, forcefully slashing. Whoosh! A gust of wind erupted along the trajectory of the slash, blowing away all the surrounding dust. Though his swift slash clearly didn't hit anything, inexplicably, it left a deep mark on the ground. Gulp! The sound of the servant swallowing his saliva became exceptionally clear. He hurriedly took the instruction and left hastily. "Practicing swordsmanship, you say?" Archie muttered speechlessly while raising both eyebrows. Outside the gate, the Rhine family's carriage was parked, with several bodyguards standing next to it. Archie and his bodyguards were nervously eyeing the knights neatly arranged all around, awaiting Riesel's appearance. Yet, he was instead informed of such an excuse by the servant. "Yes." The servant wiped away non-existent sweat and spoke respectfully. "Mr. Riesel is indeed occupied right now. He's at a crucial point in his practice, and we dare not disturb him casually." Though the servant's words were quite subtle, Archie still understood what they meant. However, returning home was not an option for him. "Can I go in to see him? We're good friends," Archie insisted. He didn't care whether Riesel was at a crucial point in his practice. This time, if he couldn't see Marquis Frenzel, there might be no chance in the future. By then, his family situation would be settled, and his father would undoubtedly appoint his useless elder brother as the heir. If that happened, it would be too troublesome. Therefore, he definitely needed to see Riesel, no matter what. If it weren't for the fact that this was the residence of Marquis Frenzel, Archie, as the second son of a count family, wouldn't have hesitated to barge in. Hearing Archie's adamant request, the servant became anxious. Since Riesel didn't intend to meet Archie, the servant could simply ignore Archie and ask him to leave. But firstly, Riesel was just a guest and wasn't part of the Frenzel family, so the servant couldn't just turn away all visiting guests because of his instruction. Secondly, Archie was a major noble, making the servant hesitate to offend him. If it were Yuri's orders, the servant would unquestionably follow them. With her backing him up, the servant didn't need to worry about any consequences. However, since the instruction came from Riesel, he had to consider whether offending Archie was worth it. Fortunately, as the servant wrestled with his decision, someone capable stepped forward. "What's all this commotion about?" Ian walked out of the mansion, observed the situation, and approached while furrowing her brows. "Miss Ian." The servant hastily greeted, bowing his head. "Hello, Miss Ian." Archie smiled and greeted warmly. "Do you remember me?" Unfortunately, his seemingly friendly attitude was purely for show. "You're the Rhine family's second son, I naturally remember." Ian nodded towards Archie, then said expressionlessly. "Excuse me, do you have any business here?" Her businesslike demeanor left Archie stunned, freezing him in place. I am here to ask Riesel about something." He could only smile awkwardly, revealing his purpose. "Mr. Riesel is likely busy." Ian politely declined, seemingly aware of his true intentions. "Tomorrow, we're heading to the Frenzel territory, and he will accompany us. Since it's already late, he must have many preparations to make. Why not wait until we return, and then young Master Archie can catch up with Mr. Riesel?" "Wait until you guys return. What's the point then?" Archie felt an urgency within him, his impatience causing a hint of irritation in his tone. "I have something really important to discuss with him, so let me meet him. He's just a guest, right? There's no need to be so considerate toward him." Upon hearing that, Ian's frown deepened, and she looked at Archie as if she were dealing with a clown. Indeed, Riesel Brynhart was just a guest of the Frenzel family, with no deep connections to them. But the point was that he had a good relationship with the head of the family herself. Did this young master think that her master would just persuade anyone to stay, allowing them to live in her home without paying, and even have access to her master's important hidden library. Except for Miss Marilyn, she and Anne were her master's most trusted attendants. Yet, her master unhesitatingly commanded the two of them to act as his bodyguards. Wasn't that enough to indicate his significance to her master? With such a relationship, even if he was a stranger with no deep ties to them, or even an enemy, as long as it didn't involve a deeply personal conflict, they had to get along and show respect to him. How could this young master dare to say there was no need to be so considerate toward him? Did this Rhine family's second son actually appear somewhat clever but turn out to be so dumb and foolish? Little did Ian know that Archie wasn't dumb or foolish, he simply didn't know and realize the strong bond between Riesel and Yuri. In Archie's eyes, Riesel was merely taking advantage of the opportunity after being kindly brought back to Yuri's place for treatment due to his severe injuries. He guessed that Riesel used flattery and deception to gain sympathy from her, who then continued to accommodate him. In other words, Archie thought Riesel was using his injuries as a pretext, considering this as a rare opportunity to stay in Yuri's place and have this big shot as his backing. However, Archie didn't know that Riesel actually intended to leave, but Yuri's persistent efforts to keep him convinced him to stay temporarily under her asylum. Riesel was genuinely grateful for Yuri's kindness, even though he never explicitly expressed it. If given the chance in the future, he would surely repay her generously. However, she didn't care and regarded him as her close friend, treating him with unconditional kindness. The situation was far from Archie's imagination, as their relationship was even better than he could comprehend. As a result, Ian's tone became more aggressive. "Sorry, without Mr. Riesel's permission, we can't just let you in. Young Master Archie, please leave." Without waiting for Archie's response, Ian turned and left. "You!" Archie was instantly furious, but the stares from the surrounding knights caused much of his anger to dissipate. "Please leave." Even the hesitated servant earlier now became fearless and directly chased Archie away. There was no need to make things difficult. With even the attendant most trusted by Yuri giving orders, the servant naturally wouldn't hesitate any longer. Tch. Archie, feeling helpless, could only click his tongue, disregarding his usual polite image. He clenched his fists and, with a stride full of anger, prepared to leave. However, at this moment, an unexpected sound of explosion erupted. Boom! At the edge of the Frenzel residence, an explosion occurred, unleashing exploding flames and shockwaves, causing black smoke to billow from that corner. What the? Explosion! One by one, the Frenzel family's knights were shocked, unable to maintain their composure and solemn posture. Boom, 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 boom. Explosions without any warning appeared all around the walls of the Frenzel residence, causing successive billows of black smoke. "Quick!" Ian turned back and shouted orders. "Go and see what happened." Her orders restored calmness among the knights. "Yes." With a simultaneous loud response, the knights dispersed, each investigating on their own. Perfect opportunity. Archie, observing the weakened defense at the main gate because of the distracted knights, felt a surge of joy. Seizing the moment when everyone was off guard, he stealthily slipped into the Frenzel residence. Surprisingly, the magic defense system that should have been triggered strangely showed no reaction to Archie sneaking in. Meanwhile, Riesel was feeling some strange sensations in his body. "What's going on?" Boom! Awakened by the sudden explosion, he looked around in surprise at the rising black smoke. Before long, he discovered something glowing on his chest. Riesel jerked an object out of his inside breast pocket, only to find it was a money pouch. His heart tightened as he unhesitatingly threw the pouch to the ground, causing the coins inside to scatter. Among the coins, one emitted a radiant glow. As the brilliance shimmered, waves of magical energy fluctuations appeared, causing an unknown effect that plunged the entire Frenzel residence into an eerie atmosphere. What is this? The money. It's glowing. Inside the mansion, some servants and bodyguards also had glowing money pouches, with coins rolling out. Thud. Riesel crushed the glowing coin underfoot, a cold gaze appearing in his eyes. Basalo. At this point, he understood what had happened. He had been used. Used by the Basalo family. Chapter 102, Invasion. Royal Capital, Yelovaya. When the Frenzel family encountered trouble, many people noticed the commotion happening at the Frenzel residence. However, before anyone could react, as they rushed toward the Frenzel residence, an invisible barrier rose from the ground, enveloping the land near the residence. Barrier magic. Is it a tactical class barrier? No, this level of barrier magic can only be solved by tactical class magicians in the court. Who is it? Who sent tactical class magicians to deal with the Frenzel family? Enough chatter, report the news quickly. Knights and scouts from various forces, after a preliminary investigation of the situation at the Frenzel residence, returned one after another to report. The royal family reacted swiftly, while the nobles were stirred into action, each addressing the situation in their own way. For instance, the royal family, upon receiving the news, immediately dispatched court magicians to destroy the barrier magic and rescue the Frenzel family. Those with friendly ties to the Frenzel family also prepared to lend a hand, while some nobles, driven by self-interest, also sent assistance. Of course, some people observed silently from the shadows, indifferent to the situation. Meanwhile, inside the barrier, a group of people gathered. They were all ragged, some even appearing skinny, giving the impression of refugees struggling with hunger and cold. A common feature among them was a collar around their necks engraved with a rune. They watched as the barrier rose behind them, enclosing them inside. Some showed worry, others looked anxious, and some displayed outright fear, yet not one chose to escape. Is it starting? The leader of the group, a sharp-eyed man, murmured quietly, casting a sharp gaze toward the side. There appeared two figures. One was a steward with a cunning appearance, while the other was a magician draped in a long robe. Are you ready? The steward asked, wearing a sly expression. We've been ready for a while. The sharp-eyed leader coldly snorted. That's good. The steward seemed unconcerned, even saying somewhat proudly. In that case, set off immediately. I know. The sharp-eyed leader stared intently at the steward. But don't forget what you promised us. Of course. The steward grinned. As long as this plan succeeds, my young master will release you from the slavery contract, abolish your status as a slave, and grant you freedom. Upon hearing that, the other ragged slaves, regardless of whether they wore uneasy or fearful expressions, all had a glimmer of hope in their eyes. Only the sharp-eyed leader continued to look at the steward with cold disdain. Hope you guys can deliver on your promises. Leaving those words behind, the sharp-eyed leader departed in a particular direction, precisely toward the Frenzel mansion. Let's go. We're coming too. For freedom. Let's do it. The other slaves, one after another, started to show determination, following the sharp-eyed leader, and heading toward the direction of the mansion. Not long after, the slaves at the scene cleared out, leaving only the steward and the magician. With this, everything is ready. The steward finally breathed a sigh of relief, turned around, and bowed to the magician. Thank you for your assistance this time. If it weren't for the barrier magic you set up, once something happened to the Frenzel family, various factions, even the royal family, would absolutely intervene. When a strategic class magician was attacked, the kingdom would naturally react strongly. After all, they were a national treasure, embodying a country's greatest deterrent and military power. Hence, the kingdom would not just stand by if its strategic class magician were attacked. Therefore, by taking action against the Frenzel family this time, they were taking a significant risk. Without a tactical class magician setting up a barrier, their wishful thinking would shatter in an instant. For that reason, the steward had to express gratitude to the magician. However, don't misunderstand. I didn't intervene for the sake of your Basalo family. I only did it because it's most advantageous for his grace. The magician showed no gratitude, even looking at the steward with a hint of threat. This is the only chance. If you fail, we might have to face the retaliation of that madwoman. Last night, she caused a scene at His Majesty's place, leading to the confinement of all royal family children, including the crown prince. If she really goes serious, even his grace might suffer. Do you understand what I mean? Upon hearing that, the steward swallowed nervously and quickly nodded. Understood. We won't fail. Hope so. After leaving those vague words, the magician turned and left. Watching the magician disappear down the road, the steward's friendly smile gradually vanished before he spat on the ground. TCH, just a mere tactical class magician who got the Viscount title. Without latching onto a duke's thigh, do you think you could swagger in front of our Basalo family? What a clown! The steward's face was full of displeasure. Although reluctant, he must admit that with the assistance of this magician, the Basalo family's actions could proceed much more smoothly. including those special items that could temporarily disable the Frenzel residence's magic defense system. If it weren't for the fact that the magician provided those, it wouldn't be so easy to deal with the Frenzel residence's defense. He could only say it was no surprise that someone backed by a duke family could casually take out such rare and precious items. The influence of the royal family's relatives and connections truly demonstrated remarkable power. Fortunately, young master also chose to ally with that person. The steward expressed some relief with a hint of joy in his demeanor. Next is to create a commotion and then capture the commoner who upset young master. As his voice just fell, several masked people appeared from all directions, surrounding him from behind. Go! The steward smiled as he gave an order. Bring Riesel Brynhart to the young master. Upon hearing his order, the masked people quickly dispersed without a word, disappearing from sight. The Frenzel residence's magic defense system was paralyzed. This fact was confirmed only after a few minutes had passed since the consecutive explosions. With the magic defense system down, the residence lost its means of alert and defense against external threats, plunging into chaos. Especially for ordinary servants with almost no combat power, facing such a sudden situation had already thrown them into a panic. Don't panic! Anne led a group of knights into the mansion, loudly giving instructions. Everyone, follow the knight's instructions and head to the basement for shelter. Under her lead, the servants in the mansion finally avoided falling into panic, following the knights to seek refuge. Boom! The sound of explosions continued outside, making the exploding flames and black smoke increasingly intense, approaching the mansion. Anne tightened her grip on the long sword at her waist, restraining the urge to rush out and focusing on guiding the servant within the mansion. As for the outside, it had to be temporarily entrusted to Ian. On the other side, Ian had now discovered the cause of the explosion. An alchemical bomb made by alchemy magic? Seriously? Ian gritted her teeth as she stared at the fragments of alchemical bombs scattered around the corner of the destroyed wall. There was no need to think twice, they had fallen victim to a hostile attack and not because of an accident. Someone had put alchemical bombs in the vicinity, explosives imbued with the power of the explosion system magic. With enough quantity, they could even rival the destructive power of tactical class magic. The fact that a batch of these bombs had been buried all around the residence without them noticing was nothing short of disgrace. It seems the magic defense system has been malfunctioning for a while, only fully collapsing just now. Ian muttered as she watched her surroundings. Even if it hadn't fully collapsed, a malfunction in the magic defense system would disrupt the alarm functions. The culprit had probably calculated this, allowing them to plant a large number of alchemical bombs so close to the mansion without being noticed. Fortunately, they didn't dare bring the alchemical bombs inside the mansion. Otherwise, countless servants would have perished in the explosion. Just as Ian was grateful for this, suddenly, a group of people rushed out from the surroundings. Hold it! Who are you people? Don't come any closer! Halt! The knights spotted this group of people and loudly warned them. Unfortunately, not only did these people not listen, but they also viciously aggressively charged forward. One by one, the knights stepped forward to intercept, only to be met with their attacks. Halt! Ian placed her hand on the hilt of her sword, about to rush out, but her expression soon changed. She quickly turned around, drawing her sword to block a sudden attack. Ding! A heavy sword struck heavily against her raised sword, sparking friction. Oh! Have we caught a big fish? A sharp-eyed swordsman, clad in tattered attire, remarked with a sneer. A slave! Ian noticed the collar around the swordsman's neck and spoke in surprise. Don't call me slave! The sharp-eyed swordsman roared in anger and launched a fierce attack against Ian like a madman. The same scene unfolded in various corners of the Frenzel residence. A large group of slaves seemed to emerge from nowhere, storming into the residence, and fighting with knights and guards. Riesel, with furrowed eyebrows, observed the chaotic battle outside through the mansion window. What are these people plotting? He was somewhat uncertain. While the sudden invasion surprised everyone, he couldn't fathom its significance. Their target must be Yuri, right? Without delay, Riesel headed decisively to the top floor of the mansion to meet Yuri. However, after just walking several steps, he abruptly halted. Ahead, a group of masked people suddenly appeared, blocking his path. Chapter 103, A cripple? No, a powerful monster. In the constantly echoing explosions within the Frenzel residence, the corridor where Riesel stood remained eerily silent, creating an atmosphere of utter stillness. Riesel sensed a faint fluctuation of magical energy, causing an abnormal stagnation in the surrounding air. It felt as if this area was isolated from the outside world, and whatever happened in this corridor would go unnoticed beyond its confines. Barrier magic? Hey! Riesel shifted his gaze toward the group of people that had suddenly appeared in front of him. This group was small, consisting of about 4 people, each masked and dressed in a uniform resembling that of swordsmen. From their body build, they were undoubtedly males and seemed like trained assassins. Weirdly, they exuded a strange aura that didn't quite fit in with their surroundings. Among the 4, 3 had swords at their waists, while the remaining one wore a magician's robe over his swordsman attire. Clearly, 3 were swordsmen and 1 was a magician. Riesel sensed a faint magical energy emanating from the magician, indicating that he was responsible for the barrier magic isolating this corridor from the outside. The next moment, one of 4, seemingly in a leadership position, spoke. Riesel Brynhart. He spoke in a cold and mechanical tone. Someone wishes to meet you. In a single sentence, their objective became clear. Me. Riesel furrowed his brow, speaking as if thinking aloud. Your target is me and not Yuri. No, it couldn't be. Causing such a commotion and attacking the residence of a marquis who was also a strategic class magician just for him? Impossible. I see, am I something like a side task? Riesel grasped the situation. Indeed, that was the case. As a mere commoner, you stubbornly refused to leave Marquis Frenzel, shamelessly getting close to her, even deceiving her to befriend you. All of this is your sin. He spoke again in an ice-cold, mechanical tone. Consider yourself lucky. Since our young master wants to deal with you personally, you won't be executed by us on the spot. Surrender willingly and you might live a little longer. As soon as those words were spoken, the other 3 chimed in. Surrender willingly. Surrender willingly. Surrender willingly. They spoke as if chanting a mournful song at a funeral, their voices equally mechanical and chilling, sending shivers down the spine. If it were anyone else, no matter how strong their mental fortitude, they would likely feel uncomfortable witnessing this display. Unfortunately, Riesel was built differently. I see. Riesel released his tightly furrowed brow and responded indifferently. Considering the deeds your Basalo family has been up to in this mansion, buying people left and right and taking advantage of the situation to set us up, how could you not know about my relationship with Yuri? Someone like Archie might not be aware of the extent of the relationship between Riesel and Yuri, but the Basalo family had made their presence known, frequently visiting the Frenzel residence more than once. Undoubtedly, every time they visited, their steward was busy buying off the servants in the Frenzel residence left and right to gather information. The interactions between Riesel and Yuri might be unknown to outsiders, but anyone in this residence was certainly well aware of them. During the month Riesel was recuperating, Yuri made no effort to hide her actions. She visited his room daily, and once he was back on his feet, they had more than one afternoon tea session in the pavilion in the courtyard. All of that obviously couldn't escape the eyes of various servants. From what Riesel had learned, it seemed that the eldest son of the Basalo family intended to marry Yuri by bypassing her and arranging a marriage directly through her father. The recent attack upon his return from the royal market might be related to this, and it wouldn't be surprising if they wanted to eliminate him, who was too close to Yuri, in the process. Riesel estimated it was likely a misunderstanding. However, I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in playing house with your young master. Ignoring the eerie atmosphere of the 4 masked men, Riesel wasn't intimidated at all. Instead, he calmly walked toward them. Step aside. Riesel warned in a calm voice. The 4 masked men fell silent, and in the next moment, the strange aura emanating from them turned into a murderous aura. Whoosh! The next moment, the 3 masked swordsmen, like wound-up machines, suddenly accelerated, rushing forward and creating a gust of wind. At the same time, the masked magician began chanting magic, intensifying the fluctuations of his magical energy. The 4 of them attacked Riesel without hesitation or mercy. Judging by their swiftness, it seemed they had no intention of capturing him alive. In response, Riesel's footsteps remained steady, maintaining his pace, still walking calmly toward the front. As both sides advanced, they quickly collided. The 3 masked swordsmen quickly drew their swords, creating 3 sword lights as they stabbed toward Riesel. In that split second, Riesel's footsteps swayed slightly, his figure blurred, passing through the 3 incoming sword lights. One of the three masked swordsmen abruptly felt his vision blur as Riesel suddenly appeared in front of him. Bang! A swift kick landed heavily on his chest, causing a burst of impact and a muffled sound. Cough! The masked swordsman expelled air from his lungs, thrown back by the forceful blow, crashing into the wall, creating ripples in the barrier that precisely separated this corridor. Without it, he would have surely broken through the mansion wall and flown outside. Riesel's thunderous kick was indeed powerful and merciless. The other two masked swordsmen immediately halted their steps, seemingly stunned by the sudden turn of events. Only the masked magician's magic chanting continued, and after a moment, the magical energy fluctuations from his body echoed out. Blindness. Confusion. Paralysis. In one breath, the masked magician chanted 3 types of magic, each capable of inflicting negative statuses on enemies. Blindness deprived enemies of their sight, rendering everything invisible. Confusion stripped enemies of their reason, making rational thought and calm combat impossible. Paralysis caused enemies' movements to become sluggish, as if struck by an electric shock, hindering smooth actions. These 3 magics were combat class magic, not overly advanced, but when used against swordsmen lacking the ability to cure negative statuses, they were enough to disgust any swordsman. In a state of blindness, confusion, and paralysis, plus an additional 3 swordsmen attacking from the sides, anyone in this kind of situation would undoubtedly feel hopeless and despair. The 2 stunned masked swordsmen who had not yet been attacked by Riesel quickly regained their composure. They suppressed their surprise, intensified their murderous auras, and thrust their swords toward his arms. They planned to pierce through Riesel's arms from left to right, disabling his hands first before gradually overpowering him. While they claimed to capture him alive, their actions revealed that capturing him unscathed was not their intention. If he resisted, they would sever both arms. If he did not yield, they would then sever both legs. This ruthless approach would continue until Riesel completely lost his ability to resist, allowing him to be brought back for questioning. This was the approach of those who lived in the darkness, devoid of any trace of humanity. Unfortunately for them, they had targeted the wrong person. Clang, cling. A bright silver short sword silently appeared in Riesel's hand, effortlessly blocking the 2 incoming swords with an indifferent expression. Riesel's expression, eyes, and movements, there was no sign of someone who had lost their sight, reason, and suffered paralysis at all. What? Including the masked magician, all of them were utterly stunned upon watching this absurd scene. Little did they know, Riesel possessed a skill called Endless, and within its effects, there was an effect providing him with the highest-ranked abnormal resistance development ability. Bang! As Riesel swung another kick, it landed square on the face of one of the masked swordsmen, sending him sprawling backward, blood streaming down his face. H-ha! The remaining masked swordsman, devoid of the earlier mechanical and cold demeanor, now resembled a frustrated brute, stunned and speechless. Instinctively, he distanced himself from Riesel, preparing to retreat. However, a silver flash rendered all his movements meaningless. Puchi! As an extremely fast strike transformed into a silver flash, it slashed through the retreating masked swordsman's body accompanied by the tearing sound of flesh and a splatter of blood. Akh! The masked swordsman let out a scream, a straight line of blood appearing at the center of his body, splattering large amounts of blood everywhere. Riesel maintained the posture of swinging his sword, tilting his head slightly to avoid the blood splattering onto his face. 3 masked swordsmen lay defeated, 2 kicked away and 1 cut down, all incapacitated and unable to rise again. How can this be? The lone masked magician, now the sole survivor, retreated a step while shouting in disbelief. According to the Basalo family's intelligence, Riesel was supposed to be a cripple, with his gait damaged. Even if there were rumors of him practicing swordsmanship, how could he have become so powerful in just a few days? From the Basalo family's perspective, capturing Riesel should have been an easy task. Little did they expect that the supposed cripple would transform into such a powerful monster. Damn it! The masked magician, now fearful and intimidated, watched as Riesel shifted his gaze toward him. Without hesitation, the masked magician turned and fled with all his might. Just as Riesel was about to pursue, he halted. He sensed that the barrier enveloping the corridor was being rapidly broken down. Crack! Before long, the barrier shattered, reconnecting this corridor with the outside. Bang! Meanwhile, the masked magician, who fled in panic, soon collided with the one who broke the barrier, only to be kicked back by a maid accompanying them. Are you okay? Upon hearing that question, Riesel saw Yuri accompanied by Marilyn approaching him. Yuri. Riesel raised his eyebrows, expressing his surprise. Chapter 104, A fait accompli. Riesel hadn't expected that when he planned to find Yuri, she would come over first. This young lady, along with her maid, appeared unharmed. Not a single hair was out of place, and their clothes were unruffled either. They carried themselves with calm composure as if the invasion of their residence was nothing more than a mere game. Their steps toward him were oddly slow and unperturbed. "It seems worrying about you was unnecessary," Yuri remarked, glancing at the masked people lying in pools of blood or slumped in the corner. Marilyn also glanced at Hermit in Riesel's hand, saying nothing, standing half a step behind, guarding her master. "Why did you come here?" Riesel said while wiping the blood from the blade of Hermit. "It's dangerous here, you shouldn't have come out." His tone carried a scolding he hadn't even realized was there. "It's fine. Marilyn is with me, after all." Yuri picked up on his scolding tone and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. "If I didn't come out, no one would lift the tactical class magic barrier shrouding this place. I had to come out to end this farce." "Farce?" Riesel raised his eyebrows slightly. "Why do you say that?" "Because no one would be stupid enough to believe I'd have an accident in the royal capital," Yuri said indifferently. "Including the one who planned this attack." "Basalo family," Riesel whispered. "Yab," Yuri responded mockingly. "They made their attack so obvious. If something really happened to me, they would be finished. No one would believe the Basalo family could successfully hide their involvement in planning this attack, since even Riesel himself immediately figured out who was manipulating him and who orchestrated this attack. If he could, how could others not see it?" As Yuri said, the attack was too glaringly obvious. Only the abruptness of it led to uncontrollable chaos. Once the situation was dealt with, it would be easy to trace back the responsible party. Other than that, all those servants and guards who took the Basalo family's money and indirectly helped them sabotage the Frenzel family's magic defense system could each become a witness. In such a scenario, if Yuri, the national treasure-level magician of Genas, came to harm, the royal family would undoubtedly be furious. The Basalo family would incur the wrath of the entire kingdom and face severe punishment. In this world, a strategic class magician was that important. Any loss would significantly weaken a country's military power and threat level. If the Basalo family dared to do such a thing and made it so obvious, it was akin to digging their own grave. No matter how foolish, even a marquis family wouldn't be foolish enough to stoop this low. Therefore, in the eyes of some wise and perceptive individuals, this attack was nothing but a circus. Riesel also realized this, understanding Yuri's importance. "You're saying that the Basalo family attacked here solely for another purpose?" Riesel realized this. Yuri nodded, her beautiful face showing a hint of disgust. "They probably orchestrated this attack to stop me from leaving the royal capital and returning to my territory to cancel the marriage arrangement between our families." It sounded illogical to his understanding, but Riesel grasped the details. The Basalo family planned this attack not to harm Yuri but to create a false impression of Marquis Frenzel being attacked. A very important strategic class magician, being openly attacked in the royal capital, beneath the king's feet, was bound to cause a commotion. After the commotion, the kingdom would become tense, fearing another attack on Yuri. Thus, if the Basalo family manipulated things a bit, they could make the royal family and other major nobles do their best to keep her in the royal capital, ensuring her proximity for protection and preventing her from venturing outside. That was the Basalo family's goal. "What's the point of all this?" Riesel said, somewhat speechless. "Even if they force you to stay here and prevent you from returning to your territory to cancel the engagement, the Basalo family can't just forcibly marry their son to you, right?" He really didn't understand the meaning behind these actions. Yuri was clearly unwilling to marry the Basalo family's son. Even if her father approved, so what? As long as she didn't agree, could the Basalo family really force her into marriage? Forcing marriage upon a strategic class magician? Did they think she had no temper? However, Riesel momentarily forgot that this wasn't the modern world he was once in, but a world similar to medieval Europe. They naturally wouldn't dare to forcibly marry the lady, but once the marriage arrangement is confirmed, she might actually have to marry. Marilyn suddenly chimed in, leaving Riesel stunned. It seemed illogical, but she wasn't speaking without reason. In this world, nobles enjoyed privileges but also faced constant scrutiny, needing to consider their noble status and reputation in everything they did. Matters like marriages, which might seem less serious among commoners, were handled differently by nobles. It was akin to the confined lives of young ladies in ancient times, bound by their parents' wishes and matchmaking. Yuri, due to her abilities and unique position, wasn't entirely voiceless like those powerless young ladies, but in certain aspects, she was indeed still bound by limitations. Otherwise, why would she mock herself as a tool for war without freedom? Based on her position and the impact on the country, Yuri was frequently restricted. She couldn't freely use tactical class or strategic class magic, couldn't casually leave the national borders, and couldn't go wherever she pleased without the royal family's permission. All of that was a representation of her lack of freedom. If the attack of the Baisalo family did indeed have an impact, causing the royal family and nobles to join forces in keeping Yuri from leaving the royal capital, would she still defy the royal family's orders and just walk away? In that case, the Frenzel family might face charges of treason in a matter of minutes, and a mass execution wouldn't be an impossible outcome. Therefore, if Yuri were restricted to the royal capital and not allowed to leave, the Baisalo family, through negotiations with her father, might actually solidify the marriage. At that time, with a bit of publicity, the public would believe that the two families were about to unite in marriage. As a result, there would be extensive political, economic, military, and even societal cooperation between the Baisalo and Frenzel territories. Over time, the two territories might become inseparable. If things escalated to that point and Yuri still refused to fulfill the marriage, there could be unrest between the two territories. This could range from impacting interests to potentially affecting people's lives in their territories. If the unrest became too big, it could even affect the entire residents of Genas. In such a situation, even the king himself might order the marriage to prevent chaos and upheaval in the kingdom. If Yuri still didn't want to marry under these circumstances, she would have to abandon her status, her family, and even her homeland, leaving this country behind. But would the kingdom allow a strategic class magician to leave so easily? Impossible. What if this strategic class magician became a criminal in the future, using highly harmful strategic class magic against Genas? What if this magician were recruited by an opposing country, threatening Genas' security? All these concerns would turn Yuri into an enemy of the kingdom. At that time, her best outcome might be an assassination, and the worst outcome would be a public execution. This was what they called a ripple effect. Someone like Yuri, even with a slight movement, could provoke extreme reactions from others. If the king could confine his own children because of her, giving her face, it was possible he might order her assassination if she didn't return the favor. The Baisalo family targeted this vulnerability, resorting to these tactics to forcibly keep Yuri, buying time to establish a fait accompli. T/N, fait accompli means something that has already happened or been decided before those affected hear about it, leaving them with no option but to accept it. Is that even possible? Riesel asked speechlessly. He had encountered political and business maneuvers like this in his previous life, but the dynamics of this world were different from his previous life. His experiences from before weren't entirely applicable in this world, making it genuinely eye-opening for him. Yet, there were still some aspects he found perplexing. Even if that is the case, isn't it a fact that the Baisalo family attacked you? Aren't they afraid of consequences? Riesel was puzzled by this. Yuri shook his head. What consequences? The people who attacked this time were slaves, and none of them belonged to the Baisalo family. Even these masked people, it's doubtful if we can confirm any of their identities, and the Baisalo family can easily claim ignorance of them. Even if the slaves are proven to be theirs, they could just explain it away as a rebellion, finding plenty of ways to justify themselves. In the Akasha continent, incidents such as slave rebellions were not uncommon occurrences. After all, who would want to be a slave for their entire life? When faced with inhumane treatment and the harsh reality of having their human rights stripped away, slaves would rebel and resist. Furthermore, cancelling the slavery contract was not impossible. Contracts were not absolute, they were merely tools used by magicians and could be both cast and undone by them. The attendant contract was fine and safe since the terms were equal, establishing a stable relationship between the two parties, which made their cancellation somewhat difficult. However, the slavery contract, being such a one-sided and forceful contract, was a whole different story. Chapter 105, Counterattack Plan. The birth of contract. The initial purpose was to allow magicians to control powerful helpers, ensuring that these helpers whom they called attendants would protect them while chanting magic, thus ensuring the smooth casting of magic. Thus, the attendant contract was the first and original form of contract magic, with the most stable mechanism and the most reasonable procedures. Once this type of contract took effect, not only was it powerful, but the difficulty of forcibly terminating it was also huge. Especially when the master fulfilled the wishes and conditions proposed by their attendant during the contract, the power of the contract would significantly increase. Because the master had already fulfilled the promises made in their contract, the attendant who had had their wish granted naturally couldn't back out. Otherwise, wouldn't it leave the master empty-handed? Taking this into consideration, mechanisms were established when the attendant contract was created. Once the master fulfilled the attendant's wishes or conditions during the contract, its power would increase dramatically, making it difficult to cancel. Due to this, some attendants, when intentionally forming an attendant contract, wisely set a predetermined time for the contract to take effect, promising to serve for a few years or even decades. Once the time limit was reached, the contract would automatically be released, preventing them from being entangled for a lifetime. Given these factors, once the attendant contract was in effect, it was nearly impossible to terminate it, and only some extremely rare and specific methods could forcibly cancel an already effective attendant contract. However, the slavery contract, being one-sided and forceful, was a different story altogether. This type of contract magic, which deprived people of their human rights and required unconditional obedience to the master's commands, was no longer considered contract magic but rather a form of domination, manipulation, and brainwashing. Such contracts were highly unstable, with a very imbalanced structure, making it less difficult to forcibly cancel compared to the attendant contract. In general, as long as a magician's magical energy was stronger than the magician who cast the slavery contract, any magician could forcefully cancel and terminate the slavery contract. Some powerful swordsmen could also resist the effects of a slavery contract based on their power. For example, a swordsman who practiced special swordsmanship and activated the attributes within their magical energy, thus making their sword technique akin to magic, could mostly resist the slavery contract. Take the Holy Dragon sword style as an example. Swordsmen who practiced this special swordsmanship would develop a body comparable to that of a great dragon and possess an anti-magic attribute. They could even withstand the direct impact of tactical class magic, which meant forcibly planting a slavery contract into their bodies was basically impossible. Even without practicing special swordsmanship, as long as a swordsman had power surpassing the magician who cast the slavery contract, they could activate their magical energy through their swordsmanship, break free from the contract's constraints, and regain their freedom. Therefore, there were various means to abolish the slavery contract, providing those enslaved with the possibility of resistance. This resulted in incidents of slave rebellions every year on the Akasha continent, as some slaves saw hope in breaking free from their slavery. Exploiting this dynamic, the Basalo family orchestrated the attack on the Frenzel residence using slaves without fear or concern. I bet they'll claim that an unknown magician had offered freedom to the slaves as a condition, inciting these slaves to attack this place. Yuri spoke, pointing to the tactical class barrier enveloping the entire Frenzel residence. Well, this time, a tactical class magician is definitely involved. But the thing is, the Basalo family doesn't have any tactical class magician under their command, so they have a valid excuse to justify themselves. Even a perceptive person could see that the Basalo family couldn't escape involvement in this matter. But, even if that were the case, so what? In the end, as long as nothing happens to me, the kingdom and the royal family can turn a blind eye to this incident. That's politics for you. Yuri remarked helplessly. After all, within the royal capital, there were plenty who preferred her to stay in the royal capital. The royal family, in particular, wanted Yuri under their watchful eyes to make themselves feel at ease. Other nobles also had their own plans and agendas, some even harbored grievances against the Frenzel family, disliking her strategic class magician status and not minding causing trouble for her behind the scenes. In the midst of all this, if the Basalo family utilized their connections both openly and covertly, they could smooth things over and blur the lines between major and minor issues. Of course, bystanders might choose to ignore this incident, but Yuri certainly wouldn't. If the Basalo family truly did all of this, Yuri would undoubtedly retaliate. Yet if what they did could secure the marriage, the Basalo family was more than willing to pay the price. After all, as both of them were marquee families, she wouldn't go so far as to destroy their family. At most, they would have to pay some price for her retaliation, and this price was something they could afford. Therefore, as long as Yuri, this important strategic class magician, remained unharmed and the royal family's bottom line wasn't breached, the Basalo family was fearless. The only uncertain factor was the tactical class magician. Their identity was unknown, and their involvement would undoubtedly raise suspicions from various factions, including the royal family. Yet, this wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Wasn't suspicion good? The more the royal family suspects, the more they worry that some unknown party might be targeting Yuri, making them more prone to keep her in the royal capital. At the same time, the Baisalo family could shift all responsibility for the masked people who attacked Riesel to the suspected tactical class magician, thus cleaning themselves entirely. This complex web of schemes made it crystal clear how the royal family and the nobles would react. It was precisely because of this understanding that the Baisalo family dared to launch such a blatant attack, confident in predicting the responses of the royal family and nobles. However. But, that is assuming I'm okay. Yuri chuckled without any apparent reason. If something truly happens to me, the Baisalo family will be in deep trouble, even if they don't end up dead. Her words carried hidden implications that Riesel could discern. Are you suggesting? Riesel looked at her, surprised. They're trying to play tricks, right? Well, let them try then. Yuri grinned. After this incident is over, everyone will know I'm seriously injured. As her words came out, Riesel felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. For the Baisalo family's plan to work seamlessly, it was crucial that Yuri, this key character, remained unharmed. If anything went wrong with her, the Baisalo family would be finished, and the royal family and the kingdom's major nobles wouldn't turn a blind eye. They would thoroughly investigate the incident, identify the mastermind behind the attack on the Frenzel residence, and take appropriate action. The illusions created by the Baisalo family would be useless once Gina's began a serious investigation. Let's go. Yuri said cheerfully. Let's take care of things here first. Once the barrier is removed, I won't be able to move around freely here anymore. It was precisely for that purpose that she seemed so relaxed, taking her time without rushing to remove the tactical class barrier covering the Frenzel residence. Is this really okay? Riesel said hesitantly. Even if you pretend even if you are seriously injured, letting the Baisalo family be held accountable, the fact that you were attacked will still be true. If news of your serious injury spreads, the royal family will be even more concerned about your safety, and you won't be able to leave the royal capital, right? So what? Yuri retorted nonchalantly. As long as the truth about this mess gets out, can the Baisalo family still continue proposing a marriage with my family? Certainly not. Once news spread about Yuri being seriously injured due to the Baisalo family's planned attack, she would have every reason to reject the marriage. The residents in her territory would also refuse to cooperate with a noble who harmed their lord. In this case, the Baisalo family's plans to create a fait accompli would also fail. Moreover, I still haven't received any instructions from the king to stay, have I? Yuri continued casually. As the one seriously injured in this incident, it's reasonable and fair for me to escape this unsafe royal capital and return to my own territory to save my life, isn't it? Reasonable and fair? What a load of crap. If she were seriously injured in the royal capital, the reasonable and fair thing to do would be to escape to the royal palace, seeking the protection of the royal family. This would truly be a reasonable and fair course of action. Yuri's move indicated that she was preparing to play a political game. In case she actually slipped out of the royal capital and the royal family saw that the situation was already resolved, even if they suspected something fishy about Yuri's serious injury, they could only turn a blind eye and choose to ignore it. The Baisalo family had their own tricks and games, so it was only natural that Yuri, as the head of the Frenzel family, could play as well. After all, political maneuvering between nobles was not uncommon in any kingdom, and the royal family might even appreciate it. If all the nobles suddenly stopped competing with each other, the royal family would be on edge, overly suspicious of a coup d'état, fearing that the next day they might wake up to find their dynasty over. Considering this, as long as it did not touch absolute red lines, the royal family generally turned a blind eye to the power struggles between nobles, whether it was the Baisalo family plotting against the Frenzel family or the Frenzel family retaliating against the Baisalo family. However, there's a problem we need to address. Yuri changed the topic, bringing Riesel back to reality. What is it? Riesel asked instinctively. The current commotion is not big enough. Yuri said faintly as she gazed outside the window. Only this level of chaos is not enough to prove that something big has happened here, something that could harm a strategic class magician protected by multiple sword masters and 100 skilled knights. As the saying goes, to prove that someone was burned alive in the fire, there needs to be a sufficiently intense blaze. It would be best if a tactical class magic is unleashed here, causing widespread destruction. Yuri addressed the problem. The lady can't do it herself. Marilyn indifferently chimed in. Her magical energy is too distinctive. If some court magician were to investigate, it would surely be exposed. The question was, where could they find an unknown tactical class magician at this time and in this situation? This was the only loophole in Yuri's plan that hadn't been resolved yet. If this loophole wasn't addressed, she would have to resort to other means. Using items like alchemical bombs as substitutes should achieve the same effect, though the cleanup afterward might be a bit troublesome. Yuri explained with a sigh. Upon hearing that, Riesel remained silent. After a while, he sighed. As long as a tactical class magic lands here, right? Hearing his sudden question, Yuri and Marilyn looked at him in wonder. All right. Leave it to me then. After saying that, Riesel left the corridor without waiting for Yuri's answer, heading directly to the exit. Yuri and Marilyn exchanged a confused glance, both having an incredible speculation in their minds. Could it be? Chapter 106, My Friend. The explosion in the Frenzel residence had ceased, though it was unclear when. The alchemical bombs buried all around the residence seemed to have detonated, no longer causing harm. The surrounding walls had collapsed, allowing black smoke and exploding flames to billow. The ground, as well as all sides of the residence, became pockmarked as if it had suffered a fierce artillery attack. At first glance, the situation seemed dire. But upon closer inspection, apart from the courtyard being affected, the luxurious mansion had suffered almost no damage with no casualties. Yes. Everyone emerged unscathed since the unarmed servants had sought refuge in the underground cellar. The knights and guards, with some injuries but nothing serious, remained in the area. In contrast, the slaves who had attacked the Frenzel residence were now experiencing heavy casualties. Some lay on the ground, others in pools of blood. Some were restrained by the knights and guards, while others were tied up with ropes, each looking rather pitiful. Even the sharp-eyed slave, now lying beneath Ian's sword, wore a face filled with regret. Proven by reality, it was simply impossible for these slaves to overcome 100-strong knightly order led by a sword master. The Frenzel family's knightly order possessed a strength that left even Riesel astonished, generally ranging from level 3 to level 4. How could a group of people fallen into slavery pose a threat to knights who trained daily and had experienced numerous battles? The sharp-eyed slave did show some strength, probably comparable to level 4. Unfortunately, he happened to face a sword master equivalent to level 5, and the outcome was easily predictable. If there were any sword masters among these slaves, the Basalo family would have surely recruited them, rather than sending them as sacrificial pawns. After all, very few sword masters became slaves because there weren't many magicians capable of imposing a slavery contract on a swordsman of this caliber. Only tactical class magicians and above could enslave a sword master. Even if a sword master was enslaved, they were considered the most precious commodity. If one appeared in the royal market, it would be auctioned as the highlight of the event, not something the Basalo family could casually buy in bulk in the slave district. Therefore, the slaves who attacked the Frenzel residence, despite possessing combat abilities, ultimately fell short of the knights trained under major nobles. Otherwise, the nobles wouldn't bother training their own knights and would simply buy slaves directly. Among this group of slaves, the only standout was the sharp-eyed slave, while the rest couldn't measure up at all. Perhaps it was precisely because of this that Ian chose not to kill him and spared his life. As Ian prepared to send all the slaves away, Anne, who was responsible for dispersing personnel and protecting the servants in the mansion, suddenly appeared with a command. Go into the basement and wait. Ian was momentarily surprised, but in the next moment, Anne's whispered words in her ear made her show a look of sudden realization. With a group of knights and slaves, they all quickly entered the basement. Unbeknownst to them, someone had climbed onto the roof of the mansion. It was none other than Riesel. Have they all taken shelter? Riesel muttered as he looked down at the entire residence from above. After confirming that there was no one in sight, he raised his head, looking at the tactical class barrier overhead. Basalo family, hey! Riesel squinted his eyes, suddenly smiling. Since they used me, I'll personally take this bit of interest. He was someone who held grudges after all. In his previous life, many unpleasant things had happened to him, and although he had grown numb to them, he always remembered and vowed not to repeat them in this life, even at the cost of his own life. In the past, when ambushed by the Freya Familia in the world of Danmachi, Riesel also took note of this grudge and vowed to settle it. Now, with the Basalo family's scheme of using that pouch of gold coins on him, how could he not repay this debt? Therefore, after learning about Yuri's plan, he took on this task that would add fuel to the fire without hesitation. Okay, let's begin. Riesel closed his eyes. Among the 11 types of magic he possessed, there were 3 wide area annihilation magic with destructive power on par with tactical class magic. 1, learned from Lefia, was the flame element wide area annihilation magic, Fusillade Fall Aurica. The other 2 were learned from Orario's strongest mage, Riverial Joe's elf. Being a high elf and member of elven royalty, she possessed a technique called chant connection. It allowed her to segment and connect the chants of her 3 magic, showcasing different effects and powers. Through the flexible use of chant connection, she could break down each of her magic into 3 levels, allowing her 3 magic to manifest in a total of 9 different forms. Hence, Riveria received praise from various gods and earned 9 Hell as her alias. Riveria's 9 magic was actually only comprised of 3 magic, which were attack magic, defense magic, and healing magic. However, with the chant connection, these 3 magic were divided into 9 types, becoming 3 attack magic, 3 defense magic, and 3 healing magic. Riesel learned a total of 5 magic from Riveria, leaving 4 untouched. Of these 4 untouched magic, 3 were healing magic, as she believed her healing magic couldn't match Ermid's Dia Fratel, so she chose not to teach them to him. The remaining 1, which was one of 3 attack magic, had the strongest power and effects, situated on the 3rd level. The reason for not teaching this particular magic was solely its overwhelming power. Riveria hesitated to use it even in the dungeon, fearing it could harm allies, destroy the terrain, and lead to casualties on one's own side. In the city, the consequences would be even more catastrophic. Regardless, she still taught him both the 1st and 2nd levels of her attack magic, along with the other 3 defense magic. Now, what Riesel was about to use was precisely the 2nd level of Riveria's attack magic, the most potent among the 3 wide area annihilation magic he mastered. The flame will soon be released. A solemn chant echoed from Riesel's mouth. Creeping war, unavoidable destruction. The horn of battle sounds aloud, the cruelty of conflict will envelop all. A fiery red magic circle emerged beneath his feet. Come, crimson flames, the ruthless inferno. The magic circle began to expand, spreading across the entire roof. You are the avatar of hellfire. Sweep completely, bring a close to the great war. The temperature in the air began to rise, letting the scorching aura permeate all around. Burn them through, sword of Surtur, my name is Elf. Riesel slowly opened his eyes, transforming a substantial amount of his mind into magical energy, releasing it. Arie Leavitian. The flame-red magic circle expanded extremely fast at that moment. Whoosh! In the next second, massive flames appeared. It burst forth from the magic circle as if red fire had erupted from the depths of hell itself, instantly dyeing the entire area crimson. The temperature in the atmosphere quickly soared, increasing to a level that ordinary people would find unbearable. The intense heat raged, filling every inch of the tactical class barrier without leaving a gap. Soon, the ground ignited, the courtyard ignited, the flora ignited, and even the only undamaged mansion was mercilessly set ablaze, thoroughly engulfed in flames. The red fire, capable of burning everything to ashes, raged throughout the entire Frenzel residence, shrouding everything in flames. This was a sea of fire that could incinerate everything within a radius of several kilometers. Riesel stood on the gradually burning mansion rooftop, watching everything unfold. His face and eyes seemed to be on fire, glowing red. After a while, he turned around, leaped, and jumped down from the mansion rooftop. Only the sea of fire remained, continuing to burn as if it would never extinguish. Yuri, who had retreated to the edge of the barrier, was momentarily stunned senseless. She saw a massive magic circle appear over the mansion, and flames descended from the sky, enveloping the entire Frenzel residence. He actually unleashed a tactical class magic. Staring at the astonishingly high-temperature sea of fire, Yuri seemed somewhat in a daze. On her side, Marilyn was also gazing at the scene, her eyes flickering. "My lady," Marilyn said in a hushed voice. "Mr. Riesel seems to hide something." Hearing her maid's words, Yuri pursed her lips and remained silent. Hiding something? Wasn't that obvious? He was clearly bedridden and dying not long ago. Yet, after getting up and recovering from his injuries, he could effortlessly defeat a sword master from the shadow and casually unleash tactical class magic. Both swordsmanship and magic were at such a high level, almost unbelievable. Before being bedridden, Riesel definitely didn't possess such power. If he had, he wouldn't have been on the brink of death, almost killed by someone. The question was, why did he completely change after that incident? Not just in terms of power, even his personality seemed to have transformed, like a different person. Should we investigate him again, my lady? Marilyn carefully weighed her words, pondering what exactly she suggested. Yuri understood that Marilyn suspected Riesel of having some ulterior motives. Logic also told her that she should do what her maid suggested, to uncover whether he was intentionally hiding some unknown plot. However, I don't want to doubt my friend, Yuri stated simply before turning away. Once Anne and Ian have everything arranged, tell them to come and meet us outside the royal capital. After saying that, she left directly. Marilyn, however, stood in place, her eyes still flickering as she watched Yuri's departing figure. Marilyn knew Yuri was avoiding. Becoming a marquis at the age of 17 was naturally impossible for an idiot. Yuri was wise and intelligent, evident in her planning to counterattack the Basalo family. However, her past had been too restrictive and oppressive. Now that she had finally gained a friend with whom she could share her true thoughts and be her true self, she didn't want to treat him with the overly suspicious mindset typical of nobles. Riesel was a rare and her only friend. Yuri was unwilling to lose him, subconsciously rejecting anything that might lead to losing this connection. For that reason, she could do anything for this friend and could ignore everything for them as well. However, for us, the most important one is you, not Riesel Brynhart. Marilyn looked toward the sea of fire behind, a cold glow appearing in her eyes. Several seconds later, Marilyn turned and left, following Yuri's footsteps. Chapter 107, Exposed. Pang! The tactical class barrier finally shattered. The sudden shattering of the barrier enveloping the Frenzel residence caught everyone watching outside off guard. What's happening? Fire! This heat and flames! It's tactical class magic! Various surprised scouts reacted one after another. Without hesitation, they retreated from the Frenzel residence's perimeter to avoid any complications and needed to relay the information to their superior as soon as possible. Unbeknownst to these scouts, several people had escaped from the other end of the Frenzel residence, leaving this chaotic place and the royal capital behind. Apart from these people, someone else was actually stumbling and fleeing from another direction. It was none other than Archie. I made it out. Archie, looking at the flames chasing behind him, ran out while tears of joy streaming down his face. Yes. I made it out. Recalling the recent events, he still felt a lingering fear. In his search to see Riesel and Yuri, he had sneaked into the Frenzel residence alone, narrowly escaping danger several times. What made it worse was he didn't get to see them at all, as all he encountered were only knights and slaves. He first ran into some knights, then suspected of being one of the attackers, resulting in a pursuit. Shortly afterward, he encountered some slaves and they also attacked him without reason, forcing him to use magic to fight back. As he fought the slaves and was pursued by the knights, both sides soon met and engaged in their own fight, dragging him into it as well. Whether knights or slaves, they treated him as their enemy, wanting either to capture or kill him. He had to fight back and explain himself at the same time, running in circles until he managed to escape the chaotic Frenzel residence. However, in his escape, he witnessed an unforgettable scene. Riesel wasn't worthless at all. Recalling the last scene he witnessed, Archie found it hard to believe. He saw with his own eyes Riesel appearing on the roof of the mansion. He also witnessed Riesel chanting powerful magic, unleashing the hellish red fire, blasting toward the entire residence. Before long, the entire Frenzel residence fell into a sea of fire. Archie himself narrowly escaped the pursuit of flames, almost getting burnt to ashes. Fortunately, he managed to escape and discovered this huge secret. What? His gate is damaged. What? Can't be a magician anymore. What a bullshit. He's not only unharmed but also grown stronger, becoming a tactical class magician. Archie felt he had a sudden revelation. Why was Riesel looked upon favorably by the Frenzel family, even allowed to stay at their residence? Obviously, because Riesel was a tactical class magician and thus recruited by the Frenzel family, becoming one of their people. The reason Riesel pretended to be useless was merely to deceive the other nobles, to fool other factions, serving as a hidden trump card for the Frenzel family. In the eyes of many nobles, this wasn't a rare occurrence. Many of them also secretly employed various means to enhance their family's strength without others knowing. In Archie's view, Riesel was deliberately hidden by the Frenzel family, a card moved into the shadows. Because of that, Rizal was declared a cripple publicly, yet still allowed to reside in the Frenzel residence as if he were just lodging there. His so-called practice of swordsmanship was also a facade, only meant to divert attention. Now, with the Frenzel residence unmistakably under attack and a tactical class barrier hinting at the involvement of a tactical class magician, it was only natural for Rizal, also a tactical class magician, to be dispatched to confront the enemy magician. I always wondered why that country boy got so damn cocky all of a sudden. Turns out, he's already become a tactical class magician. Damn him. Obviously, he doesn't feel the need to bow and nod to our relationship anymore. Archie felt both relieved and jealous. If he were also a tactical class magician, he wouldn't have to worry about being abandoned by his family. As for Rizal, if he had known that Rizal had become a tactical class magician, he shouldn't have thought Rizal was worthless before and ignored him. He should have taken advantage of that time to build a better relationship with Rizal. Perhaps he could make this tactical class magician his subordinate. Who would have thought the outcome would be like this? Fuck, can't do it. I've got to make good use of this information. Archie cursed silently and began to ponder. The guy who stayed in the Frenzel residence is actually a tactical class magician. If this news spreads, it's bound to attract the attention of major nobles and even the royal family, including my father. As a result, Rizal would be under intense scrutiny and would be thoroughly investigated by various factions to determine his origin. When the time came, everyone would know that he used to have a good relationship with Rizal and they were in the same small group. They had even gone to the royal market together recently, chatting and laughing, which solidified the credibility of their relationship. In that case, considering I have a tactical class magician as a friend backing me up, who also has a decent standing in the Frenzel family, even if my father is super stubborn, he can't just brush off my feelings, right? He will undoubtedly have to take my feelings into account when appointing my elder brother as the heir. As he thought like that, Archie's eyes lit up. Yes. This is the way to go. Then there's only one thing I need to do. Spread the news about Rizal Brynhart being a tactical class magician. The wider, the better. With that decision firmly in mind, Archie quickened his pace, distancing himself from the chaotic scene. Not long after, news that would drop the jaws of many in the royal capital began to surface, becoming known to all. On this day, there were many hot topics in the royal capital, Yelovaya. The Frenzel residence faced an attack by rebellious slaves, suspected to have been incited by a tactical class magician from a foreign land, which sparked the entire incident. Marquis Frenzel, while engaging the enemy, fell victim to an ambush, sustaining severe injuries. Only with the protection of her attendants did she manage to narrowly escape the royal capital. Miraculously, all the knights and servants emerged unharmed, seeking refuge in the basement, with no reported casualties. During a critical moment, the one who bravely confronted the foreign tactical class magician and shifted the course of events was a tactical class magician named Rizal Brynhart. Such pieces of news spread throughout the royal capital after the tactical class barrier on the Frenzel residence was destroyed and reinforcements from various factions quickly entered the scene. This news shocked the entire royal capital. Marquis Frenzel is seriously injured and escaped the royal capital. Isn't this very bad? Who did it? Who dared to attack our country's strategic class magician? Who is this foreign tactical class magician? Investigate. We must investigate as soon as possible. Various factions were shaken, feeling uneasy, and began to take action one after another. The royal family, in anger, dispatched their kingdom knightly order and court magicians to both rescue Yuri and execute the audacious criminals. Some also noticed that something was amiss, while others were astonished by the rapidly changing news. Frenzel family has a tactical class magician. Rizal Brynhart, hey! Isn't he the guy who had loads of rumors flying around not too long ago? He's a tactical class magician. This is seriously mind-blowing. People expressed astonishment, disbelief, and contemplation. For example, some noble children, especially Senna and Carrera, were truly shocked upon hearing this news and found it hard to believe Rizal's sudden identity as a tactical class magician. How can he be a tactical class magician? Senna was unwilling to accept reality. No wonder. Carrera seemed to understand something and sighed. As for the mastermind behind it all, the eldest son and young master of the Basalo family, upon learning the news, was dumbfounded. No. Impossible. The young master erupted in anger, kicking a trembling steward, who knelt before him. You son of a bitch! How dare you! How dare you hurt her! The enraged young master continued to kick the steward, ignoring his pitiful cries, filled with both anger and fear. It's impossible. She's a strategic class magician, for fuck's sake. How could she get seriously injured by a bunch of useless slaves? This makes no sense. No sense at all. As he shouted with anger and confusion, the young master began to grasp the severity of the situation. Everything he had done was solely to prevent Yuri from leaving the royal capital and returning to her territory. As long as she was unharmed, even if his family had to bear her wrath afterward, the royal family wouldn't investigate too deeply. His father could smooth things over, after all. But now, with Yuri in trouble, the nature of the situation changed. Attacking a marquis family could be excused as a mistake, but seriously injuring a strategic class magician was a crime. The royal family would not turn a blind eye to it. Moreover, how could that damn commoner be a tactical class magician? What the fuck is happening? The young master's anger flared. Initially, he was indifferent to Riesel's existence since he didn't consider a mere commoner with a damaged gate a threat. Did Riesel deserve Yuri? Certainly not. However, as Riesel and Yuri's interactions became more frequent and their relationship seemed to improve, he started to feel uneasy. Thanks to this, he planned to take advantage of the attack to bring back that low-born commoner, deal with him properly, and make him understand that not every woman in this world could be touched, especially one already reserved by him. Who would have thought that the outcome would be like this? Young master. A servant suddenly rushed in, visibly terrified. The people from the royal family came. The lord asked you to go over. And did. After thinking like that with despair, the young master suddenly felt his vision blacking out before collapsing to the floor. Young master. The shouts of the steward and the servant echoed throughout the room. Chapter 108, Departure. Yelovaya, outskirts. This place was a vast grassland, situated a distance away from the city walls of the royal capital. The grassland stretched as far as the eye could see, seemingly enclosing the entire royal capital. Only 8 major roads extended from various city gates of Yelovaya, cutting through the grassland and extending outward. They were the main roads leading to the royal capital, as well as the main roads when leaving the royal capital, heading toward various territories of Genas. Each main road had been meticulously maintained, giving it a clean and refreshing appearance. After leaving the Frenzel residents Riesel, Yuri, and Marilyn, made their way out of the royal capital, arriving at this grassland divided by the 8 main roads. Their location was quite remote, far from the main roads, making it difficult to encounter anyone. However, this also meant that the 3 didn't have to worry about being found, waiting here for Anne and Ian's arrival. The wait stretched for several hours. After several hours, a carriage finally approached from the direction of the main road, crossing the grassland and reaching the spot where they were. Sorry for the delay, my lady. We're late. Looking a bit disheveled, Anne and Ian stepped down from the carriage, bowing in apology to the casually observing Yuri. No problem, can't blame you. Yuri shook her head. The tasks I gave you were indeed a bit much. It's already impressive that you managed to complete them in just a few hours. As the ones that were deliberately left at the Frenzel residence by Yuri, Anne and Ian indeed had a heavy workload. They had to gather knights, guards, and servants to extinguish the fire. Moreover, they had to deal with the royal family and various representatives from major nobles. Finally, they needed to settle the knights, guards, and servants before finding an opportunity to locate Yuri. It was quite challenging for both of them to complete so much work in just a few hours. Yuri understood that and didn't pressure Anne and Ian to hurry. She didn't even blame them for making her wait for several hours. How's everything? Is everything sorted out? Yuri casually inquired. Yes. Anne replied immediately. Everything has been taken care of, my lady. Ian reported diligently. The fire at the residence has been extinguished, and temporary accommodations have been arranged for the guards and servants. We've also disclosed the news of your serious injury to the royal family's representatives. After completing all this, we brought the nightly order out together in the name of searching for you and smoothly left the royal capital. Now, the nightly order had been divided and dispatched by Anne and Ian, departing in various routes. They were executing a mission of finding their lady while heading toward the Frenzel territory. As a result, only Anne and Ian arrived in this place. The rest did not know that Yuri was actually here, let alone understanding her plan. They genuinely believe their lady was seriously injured, with some worrying and others anxious. After all, to deceive others, one must first deceive their own people. Considering this, only the 5 people present here truly know Yuri's true plan and current condition. Very well. Yuri nodded in satisfaction. At this moment, Riesel, curious on the side, asked. What's the situation in the royal capital now? Upon hearing his question, Anne and Ian quickly turned their attention to him. Their demeanor had changed compared to before. If Riesel's previous display of power, surpassing that of an ordinary sword master, had earned recognition from Anne and Ian, making them no longer view him as a mere guest, then today's performance had subtly made the two lower their guard and show him some respect. After all, he wasn't just a highly skilled sword master but also a tactical class magician. Either having one of these identities alone would command respect, let alone both. Anne and Ian had never heard of anyone in genus who excelled in both swordsmanship and magic, achieving such feats before. A sword master and a tactical class magician, Riesel, with both of these identities, would likely hold a position just below a sword saint and a strategic class magician. In the face of such a figure, showing some respect, if not awe, was deemed necessary by Anne and Ian. As a result, Ian was the first to answer Riesel's question in a formal and respectful tone. The royal capital is in chaos right now. No one could have anticipated that a strategic class magician residing in the royal capital would be severely injured due to a plotted attack. Furthermore, no one expected the lady would choose to flee the royal capital. As a result, whether it's the royal family or major noble families, everything is in chaos. Even those who tried to stay out of it are getting involved. Yuri's plan with the fake escape truly played out well. Initially, many major forces in the royal capital viewed this incident as a joke, as perceptive people understood that the attack was orchestrated by the Baisalo family since their goals were not hidden from the royal family and nobles. In this situation, everyone who knew the inside story treated the incident as a foolish joke, a circus. Even Yuri herself thought so. However, Yuri had a surprise in store, intending to turn the tables and shatter the dismissive attitude of those watching. With her move, this event would undoubtedly escalate. As long as her safety remained unconfirmed, the royal capital would likely never find peace. This was Yuri Frenzel's retaliation. Not only against the Baisalo family but also against those who only coldly observed, remained indifferent, and chose to ignore the Baisalo family's actions, allowing Marquis Frenzel to be attacked unjustly. Especially the royal family, Yuri undoubtedly harbored long-standing grievances to them. Even without Riesel's earlier involvement in political struggles, the fact that she faced various restrictions and became so constrained in her freedom persisted. Now, presented with an opportunity to make a retaliation, she had no qualms about doing so. Powerful women are not to be trifled with, hey. Riesel marveled, silently evaluating Yuri in his mind, then asked again with apparent nonchalance. What about the Baisalo family? The direct members of the Baisalo family have all been taken to the royal palace by the kingdom knights. Especially their eldest son, with the highest suspicion. There's a possibility he's been colluding with a tactical class magician from foreign lands. The king is preparing to interrogate him personally. Ian explained, her tone betraying a hint of satisfaction. The nearby Anne also couldn't hide a sense of satisfaction in her eyes. Undoubtedly, Yuri wasn't the only woman holding a grudge, these two were equally vengeful. Of course, Riesel had no right to judge others since he was also someone who held grudges. It seems everything is going smoothly. Yuri smiled ambiguously. Since that's the case, let's depart to the Frenzel territory. Are we really going, my lady? Ian questioned. With this incident, it should be impossible for the Baisalo family to plan any marriage, right? Who knows? Yuri replied indifferently. There's always another Baisalo family. I don't want another marriage proposal to suddenly appear in my life without me knowing. In other words, this trip to the Frenzel territory was undoubtedly a must for her. There are things that my father, who arbitrarily decides my marriage, won't understand unless I explain to him personally, face to face. Besides, I can't really disappear completely, or chaos won't be limited to just the royal capital. Yuri explained calmly while looking at the blue sky. If I, a strategic class magician, disappear for a long time, not just Gina's, but the surrounding countries will take action. Whether the so-called humanoid bomb has truly disappeared or is roaming outside freely is a crucial matter for any country. If I disappear for too long, the consequences will be significant. I can't afford to play around with that. She needed to appear in the right place at the right time to ease the minds of many, and returning to the Frenzel territory was a good choice. Let's go. Yuri took the lead and headed toward the carriage. Marilyn, Anne, and Ian quickly followed, while Riesel stood still, watching Yuri's back, pondering. After a while, everyone finally boarded the carriage. Riesel, Yuri, and Marilyn entered the compartment, while Anne and Ian sat in the driver's seat. Riesel glanced around the luxurious compartment and spoke up. So, we're taking the carriage to Frenzel territory like this. It was not surprising for him to ask like that. The Frenzel territory was remote, located north of the royal capital, near the border area. If they only use a carriage, it might take a couple of months. Riesel did feel a bit uncomfortable on such a long journey. Inside the carriage, he could neither practice swordsmanship nor engage in combat. If he had to spend a couple of months in the carriage, it would be too distressing. Fortunately, things weren't as bad as he thought. We'll take the carriage to Trintia first. Yuri answered. There's a grand canal there. We'll take a ship through the water route, and it'll only take 3 days to reach the Frenzel territory. There's a grand canal in Gina's. Riesel asked with astonishment. Of course. Yuri smiled. This grand canal was excavated by many magicians, workers, and craftsmen called upon by the king centuries ago. It flows through various territories of the kingdom. Through it, anyone can quickly reach any territory governed by any noble without having to endure the dull and lengthy journey by carriage. After saying that, she shouted toward the driver's seat. Let's depart. Hearing their master's command, Anne and Ian quickly drove the carriage toward the other side of the grassland. Chapter 109, Closer. Splash. The water rippled, creating layers of ripples and the sound of waves. Under the clear blue sky that stretched for miles, a vast canal flowed through numerous plains and mountains, extending in all directions across the land. On the water, a massive wooden ship sailed through the waves, creating intense splashes as it moved forward. Waves resonated loudly, making the water's sound never-ending. Before long, on the deck of the ship, a figure slowly walked up to the front, gazing into the distance. What a fantastic view! Looking at the endless water and the clear blue sky, Riesel expressed rare words of admiration in a somewhat joyful tone. It had been a day since they left the royal capital, Yelovaya. Following Yuri's instructions, everyone spent a day on the carriage, arriving in the city of water, Trintia. From there, they boarded a seemingly prepared ship and sailed along the Grand Canal that flowed through various territories of Gina's, heading toward the Frenzel territory. They adhered to the principle of not revealing their identities throughout the journey. Thus, no one noticed their arrival in Trintia. The ship's captain and sailors also seemed oblivious to their presence, never engaging in conversation with them. Riesel didn't understand the reason behind this, but he assumed it was the work of the Frenzel family, so he chose not to dwell on it. Right now, the ship had officially set sail, and they would reach the Frenzel territory in 3 days. Holding a wooden sword, he initially planned to practice on the ship deck but couldn't resist stopping to appreciate the scenery after seeing it. How massive is this canal? Riesel unconsciously mumbled to himself. I can't even see the shore, it's like entering the sea. Although no one answered his question, it prompted a response. So you still care about that kind of thing? Accompanied by a pleasant voice, Yuri emerged from the cabin, walking to his side and leaning against the railing, looking into the distance. Just a casual remark. Riesel responded. He wasn't surprised by her arrival. He didn't even cast a glance in her direction but continued to gaze at the water's surface with a smile on his face. I was thinking about what I would do if you got seasick. Yuri said casually, as if liberated from something, and laughed lightly. Gina's isn't a coastal country after all, so people rarely have the chance to take a ship. Many people feel uneasy the first time they board a ship, so I was wondering if you needed a potion for seasickness. You're worrying too much. Riesel smirked. Unfortunately, I've had experience with ships, so I won't be needing your potion. In his previous life, he sought thrills and even survived in the wilderness, so how could he not have experienced sailing? He not only traveled across the sea but also took on the challenge of deep-sea diving. He even dared to surf in a tsunami and had the idea of confronting sharks in the ocean. If it weren't for the intervention of fellow travelers at the time, he might have crossed that line 1 or 2 times. For someone like Riesel, seasickness was out of the question. Truthfully, this scenery shouldn't have elicited admiration from him. It was just an ordinary canal after all, nothing compared to the wonders of the sea in his previous world, let alone the water city from the 25th to the 27th floors in Danmachi's dungeon. Perhaps it was because his mood wasn't as suppressed as it had been in his previous life, or maybe he didn't need to be constantly on guard against monster attacks as he did in the dungeon, he could now appreciate the current scenery with a lingering sense of peace. Why did you come out? Riesel turned his head to Yuri. It's quite windy outside. Being a delicate magician, you don't want to catch a cold. Talking about me again. Aren't you a magician yourself? Yuri replied casually without much thought. Each of their words left both of them momentarily speechless, especially after Yuri mentioned magician. As a result, the silence hung between the two of them, dispelling the peaceful atmosphere that had prevailed until now. All right, let's go back. Yuri, as if to break the somewhat awkward atmosphere, spoke in a light tone and prepared to turn away. However, Riesel's sudden question stopped her. Aren't you going to ask? Aren't you curious why my gate is damaged but I can still use magic? Riesel asked casually with a calm expression. Upon hearing that, Yuri paused. What are you hesitating about, Missy? Riesel shot her a glance and grinned. I thought you would ask me this kind of question on our journey, but it seems like you've been avoiding it, making me a bit awkward, you know. After saying that, he threw in another remark. This doesn't seem like you at all, Yuri. Indeed, it didn't seem like Yuri. Before this, whenever she spent time with him, she generally seemed very cheerful. It was almost as if she spoke whatever came to her mind and didn't need to consider anything, let alone think about anything. It felt very relaxing and very enjoyable. However, during the day before leaving the royal capital, she often seemed to deliberately avoid bringing up this somewhat sensitive topic. This resulted in Yuri giving Riesel a sense of being cautious and speaking to himself very carefully, which made him feel extremely awkward and uncomfortable. Feel free to ask whatever you want. Riesel said in a calm tone. No need to be so cautious with me. Upon hearing that, Yuri stayed silent. Riesel didn't press her either and simply waited quietly. After a while, Yuri took a deep breath, turned around, and looked at Riesel's face with a serious expression. If I ask you, will you answer? Yuri questioned. She stared at him intently, as if trying to read his thoughts and see through his eyes. In response, his demeanor remained calm, even displaying a faint smile. You've misunderstood something here. Riesel looked at her eyes. If I wanted to hide something, I wouldn't have revealed all of those in front of you from the beginning. Upon hearing that, Yuri realized he had a point. Did it make sense? If he truly wanted to conceal something, he wouldn't have so openly displayed his abilities in front of her. When ambushed by the shadow, Riesel indeed showcased his abilities as a swordsman, but one could argue it was due to danger, a necessity for self-defense. However, using tactical class magic in the Frenzel residence was entirely his own decision, voluntarily displaying it in front of her. What did this mean? It meant Riesel had no intention of hiding his ability to use magic in the first place. With this realization, Yuri's tension eased, and she finally let go of the day-long worry. Riesel's calmness all this time also assured her that it was indeed the case. Whether it was about how he was being severely injured, recovering at her place, or developing a friendship with her, these were all genuine acts, not intentional and driven by any ulterior motives. Realizing this, she suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of joy. So, what's your story? Yuri concealed her joyful emotions, pretending indifference. How did you suddenly regain the ability to use magic? It's a bit tricky to explain. Riesel scratched his head, shrugging. Just consider it as a stroke of luck, on the night you saved me. Luck? Yuri murmured while blinking confusedly, feeling somewhat speechless. Yeah, Riesel nodded. The me before that day, the one you knew from the rumors, wasn't wrong. It wasn't until that near-death experience that I decided to change and became the person I am now, realizing my true purpose in life. The powers I have now, whether it's swordsmanship or magic, all came after I met you and recovered from my injuries. He smiled slightly as he explained. So, you don't need to be confused or doubt anything. Just consider it as me finding a pot of gold or something, since nothing has changed. Despite the bizarreness in his explanation, Yuri could still sense his sincerity. His calm tone and open attitude allowed his words to touch her heart, creating a resonance. Yuri gazed straight into his eyes, and Riesel returned the gaze. The two exchanged silent glances for a long time before, almost simultaneously, breaking into a profound and understanding smile. Okay, I believe in you. Yuri nodded, bringing back the ease and joy of the past. Thanks. Riesel responded briefly. At this moment, there was no need for more words. Needless to say, the distance between them instantly disappeared, and if anything, it seemed even closer than before. Oh, by the way. Riesel seemed to remember something. Can you teach me magic? Teach you magic? Yuri raised an eyebrow in surprise. Can't you already use it? My method of using magic is quite special since my gate is still damaged after all. For me to use magic, I need to meet some specific conditions and can't use it on my own. Riesel explained. That's why I want you to teach me how to use your magic. That way, maybe I can try to replicate it. Is that so? Yuri nodded and lost in thought. However, her contemplation didn't last long. If you want to learn from me, I have no problem teaching you. Yuri looked at him with a playful smile. But I can be quite strict, you know. Hey? PFTTT, ha 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 ha. Her playful remark left Riesel momentarily stunned, followed by a burst of laughter. After laughing for a while, he sighed with relief before gazing into her eyes with a somewhat solemn expression. Then, please be strict with me, teacher. Pfft. Riesel's response and behavior prompted Yuri to cover her mouth and giggle a giggle surprisingly sweet and pure. Chapter 110, 4 Major Magic Systems. Riesel, Yuri, Marilyn, Anne, and Ian had separate rooms in the ship's cabin. Among them, Yuri's room was located deepest in the cabin and was the largest in size, which was estimated to be enough for 5 people. After agreeing to teach him magic, she brought him back to this room and sat down in front of a round table in the center. Afterward, Yuri, sitting in front of Riesel, prepared something. It was a strange-looking object, somewhat resembling a large compass and a bit like a clock as well. In the center of the compass was set a palm-sized gem, filled with water, and the area around the gem was evenly divided into 4 parts, each with 7 markings. What's this? Riesel looked at the compass and doubtfully asked. Yuri, however, didn't answer his question but instead made a contemplative gesture. You started attending Spriller Academy 2 years ago, right? Yuri suddenly asked. Yet. Riesel, though feeling curious, still honestly answered her question. It's been exactly 2 years this year, and graduation is still 3 years away. Spriller Academy, as one of the highest educational institutions on the continent, operated on a 5-year student system. Those with the talent to become excellent magicians could take the entrance examination for Spriller Academy at the age of 15, and upon passing, they could enroll. After enrollment, students could spend up to 5 years at the academy, until they reach the age of 20. If they fail the graduation exam, their enrollment would be revoked, and they couldn't claim to be graduates of Spriller Academy. The original Riesel entered the academy at the age of 15 and was now 17, exactly 2 years since. As a girl the same age as Riesel, Yuri graduated early, spending only a year at Spriller Academy. But in that year, she completed all her studies, so her knowledge was actually higher than that of any other student at the academy. Upon learning about his situation at the academy, Yuri nodded in understanding. Since that's the case, you haven't started learning professional magic knowledge yet. Yuri said, looking at his face. Professional magic knowledge. Riesel wasn't quite clear about what she meant. In other words, you still don't understand enough about what the field of magic is. After saying that, Yuri began to explain. Spriller Academy is a 5-year magic academy. The first 2 years are basically about teaching the basics, which is some elementary magic. It's only in the 3rd year that the academy starts spreading professional magic knowledge, allowing you to clarify your position and understand your magic compatibility. In this world, there are countless types of magic, countless in number. There's elemental system magic that can unleash flames, lightning, or freeze everything into ice. There's also mind system magic that can alter cognition, manipulate minds, and toy with all living beings. In addition, there are also explosion system magic, precognition system magic, summoning system magic, strengthening system magic, and so on. But generally, all magic in the world can be classified into 4 major systems. After saying that, Yuri pointed to the compass in front of her. Around the compass's gem, in the 4 equally divided areas, there were lines of small text. Those 4 lines of small text respectively read: Transformation System, Control System, Interference System, Structure System. These are the 4 major magic systems, and all magic in the world is classified under them. Yuri's voice echoed softly as she continued her explanation. Transformation system refers to all magic that attaches 1 or more attributes to magical energy, enabling it to take shape instantly upon release. For example, Elemental system magic directly attaches elemental attributes such as fire, water, lightning, or wind to magical energy before shaping it into magic. The effects are evident the moment it is released. Magic of this kind, which transforms magical energy into other attributes before release, is known as transformation system magic. Control system refers to all magic capable of controlling or dominating external substances or concepts. For instance, summoning magic can summon beings like monsters or puppets, and control them for combat. Such magic falls under the control system, including manipulation of the earth, manipulation of plants, and similar magic. Interference system encompasses all magic that can affect oneself or others. Mind system magic I mentioned earlier falls into this category, capable of interfering with minds, cognition, emotions, and memories. Strengthening system magic also falls into this category, involving interference with oneself, whether strengthening the body or enhancing the mind. Even recovery system magic and healing system magic belong to the interference system. Structure system includes all magic capable of forming material substances. Alchemy magic falls into this category, whether refining gold or crafting other substances. Any magic used to refine or manufacture something belongs to the structure system. Magic weapons, magic items, potions, and similar magic items are generally crafted by magicians proficient in structure system magic. These four are the major magic systems, forming the basic framework that encompasses all magic in the world. Now, here's the question. When magicians want to learn magic, can they just study whatever kind of magic they want, based on their interests? The answer is no. Just as everyone's body differs subtly and everyone has different areas of expertise, typically, there will be people who are more suited to one or more systems. After all, excelling in the magic systems that suit you best will make it easier to succeed in it. This is what's known as magic compatibility. Magicians learning magic in the systems where they are more likely to excel, which is where their magic compatibility is higher, is the wisest course of action. Yuri explained what she knew about magic energetically to Riesel while tapping the compass in front of her. This is the magic item used to test one's magic compatibility. According to her view, everyone had compatibility in each magic system, it was just a matter of whether it was high or low. Calculating one's overall magic compatibility to a total of 100, this value is distributed among the four major magic systems. Whichever system has the highest value indicates one's higher compatibility with that system. Magic compatibility ranges from a maximum of 70 to a minimum of 10. Even in the case of extremely high compatibility, where one has the highest compatibility in one of the four major magic systems, the other three systems will still have at least 10 compatibility. So, one's highest compatibility in one system is capped at 70. Yuri pursed her lips before continuing her explanation. For example, tactical class magic, regardless of the type, requires a magician to have at least 50 compatibility within the corresponding system to cast the magic, otherwise it cannot be used. The tactical class magician who previously created the tactical class barrier magic at my place proved his 50 magic compatibility in the structure system, as they were able to construct a barrier magic of such scale and magnitude. Without this degree of compatibility, becoming a tactical class magician is simply impossible. Strategic class magicians have even stricter requirements for compatibility, requiring the highest compatibility of 70 within a certain magic system. Without this, even with abundant magical energy, strategic class magic cannot be cast. Magical energy and compatibility, both must meet requirements for magicians to have the potential to cast corresponding class of magic. With that, Yuri placed her hand on the gem of the compass. Zing! The gem immediately emitted a bright light, causing water to flow out from within. The water flowed toward the four areas around the gem, gradually filling the spaces inside. However, the water flowed most abundantly into the control system area, quickly reaching the 7th mark and filling the area, while the water in the other 3 areas only reached the 1st mark, much less than the former. This is my magic compatibility, Yuri said as she withdrew her hand. The water in the compass quickly flowed back, soon refilling the empty gem. At the same time, the glow emanating from the gem soon faded. This is the testing method for magic compatibility. It's the knowledge that only becomes widespread at Spriller Academy in the 3rd year. By then, you'll be testing your own magic compatibility and starting professional magic studies. Yuri stated with a smile. If you want to learn magic from me, you'll need to test your magic compatibility first. It's best if it aligns with my magic system though. Yuri was a strategic class magician proficient in control system magic. Hence, if Riesel also had high compatibility with the control system, learning magic from her would be extremely beneficial. However, in the case he had the lowest magic compatibility of 10 in the control system, he could still learn, albeit with increased difficulty. Naturally, this also meant some advanced magic from the control system might be beyond his grasp. Of course, this is what I consider common sense. Yuri added with a meaningful tone. If your so-called stroke of luck can defy this common sense and allow you to learn my magic, that's a different story. Upon hearing that, Riesel fell silent. Chapter 111, Magic Compatibility. Riesel, with his magic almighty, truly had the ability to break through what Yuri referred to as common sense. Regardless of whether he had compatibility with the control system, as long as she explained the detailed effects of the magic and demonstrated it in front of him, that magic would belong to him. Therefore, whether his compatibility was good or bad, to be honest, it didn't have much of an impact on him. However, he was still quite curious about his compatibility with the 4 major magic systems. As for Yuri, after knowing Riesel's miraculous feats, she didn't think his magic compatibility would be bad. Well, even though I don't know your compatibility with the control system, you should have one compatibility that can reach 5th grade. Yuri suddenly said, causing Riesel to pause. 5th grade? Riesel asked doubtfully. It means compatibility of 50. Yuri explained when she noticed his confusion. These terms come from the 4 highest academies on the Akasha continent. To simplify the assessment of students' compatibility, the 4 academies have set grades for each compatibility. Compatibility 10 is considered 1st grade. Compatibility 20 is 2nd grade. Compatibility 30 is 3rd grade, and so on. In other words, Yuri's compatibility with the control system was at the highest 7th grade, while her compatibility with the other 3 systems was at the lowest 1st grade. Earlier, Yuri mentioned that Riesel had one compatibility that could reach 5th grade, indicating he had a compatibility for a major magic system that could reach 50. Why are you so sure I can reach 5th grade? Riesel was a bit puzzled. Upon hearing his question, Yuri rolled her eyes. Why do you think you were considered to have the potential to become a tactical class magician before? Even if your magical energy is abundant enough to cast tactical class magic, if you don't have compatibility reaching at least 5th grade in one of the major magic systems, you couldn't learn tactical class magic, you know. Now here's the question: even before you underwent compatibility testing, why did everyone consider you to have the potential to become a tactical class magician and even a strategic class magician? Isn't it because of your performance at the academy, gaining recognition from the academy higher UPS? Eventually, Yuri's explanation made Riesel realize. Even though he hadn't undergone compatibility testing, the original Riesel must have shown some degree of talent during magic training at Spriller Academy. His talent gained recognition from the higher UPS at the academy, who believed he had the compatibility to cast tactical class magic. As a result, rumors of the original Riesel having the potential to become a tactical class magician and even a strategic class magician emerged precisely for this reason. Therefore, since it was possible to use tactical class magic, it proved that he had one compatibility for a major magic system that could reach 5th grade. Of course, having high compatibility just means being able to use high difficulty, high-class magic. As I mentioned before, some magicians can become powerful solely by using combat class magic. Yuri added a mild warning as she noticed his thoughtful expression. She was a little concerned that he might become complacent and arrogant. Take that friend of yours, the second son of the Rhine family, for example. It is said that he has 4th grade transformation system, 3rd grade interference system, 2nd grade control system, and 1st grade structure system compatibilities. Although he can't use tactical class magic, he can flexibly use combat class magic from 2 to 3 major magic systems, and his magic usage is extremely cleverly coordinated. That's why, even after just 3 years of enrollment, he can hold his own against sword master level experts. Perhaps Yuri had already forgotten, but saying this was akin to telling Riesel that she was investigating the people around him, out of a protective instinct. Fortunately, he didn't mind this detail, he just nodded to show he understood. Compatibility, like magical energy, was better to have more of, but it was certainly not a necessity. Generally speaking, if one just considering combat, having 4th grade compatibility in a major magic system was completely acceptable. This grade of compatibility, aside from tactical class magic and strategic class magic, could basically allow one to learn any combat class magic within that system. Mastering combat class magic, even if it couldn't become a weapon capable of annihilating armies, cities, or even countries in one strike, could still become a sniper rifle capable of precisely targeting any enemy. Yuri always held onto this mindset, never feeling complacent or arrogant about being a strategic class magician. In combat, which was usually fast-paced, without the ability to use strategic class magic or even tactical class magic, she might not necessarily defeat a sword saint. That being said, becoming a tactical class magician is certainly a great achievement in itself. Yuri seemed to change the subject, starting to console Riesel. Whether it's becoming a tactical class magician or a strategic class magician, the demands on magical energy and compatibility are extremely high. In this world, some people possess abundant magical energy, yet their compatibility might fall short. Some have high compatibility but lack enough magical energy. Because of this, few can become tactical class magicians, let alone strategic class magicians. That's why there are merely 8 strategic class magicians across the entire continent. Tactical class magicians in Genas are also few, at most 20 to 30 people. In total, there are probably only around 100 tactical class magicians on the entire continent. Yuri's meaning was that being able to become a tactical class magician, even if one couldn't be complacent, should be a source of pride. Come in, let's see how your compatibility fares. Yuri pushed the compass toward Riesel. Riesel's attention was immediately diverted, looking at the compass in front of him. He extended his hand and placed his palm on the gem. Zing! The gem immediately radiated light, causing water to flow out from it. Before long, all the water flowed into the 4 designated areas. Riesel and Yuri watched closely. Transformation System, 1st grade. Control System, 2nd grade. Interference System, 5th grade. Structure System, 2nd grade. Riesel's magic compatibilities were 5th grade for the Interference System, 2nd grade for the Control System and Structure System, and 1st grade for the Transformation System. Interference System reaching 5th grade? That's surprising. Yuri muttered, somewhat taken aback. Is it strange? Riesel asked. No, just unexpected. Yuri shook her head. Among the 4 major magic systems, the Transformation System is widely known for its compatibility and proficiency, while the Interference System is the opposite. Though not particularly rare, magicians proficient in Interference System magic are the fewest. Among the 8 current strategic class magicians, 4 specialize in the Transformation System, 2 in the Control System, and 2 in the Structure System. Not a single one specializes in the Interference System. Even among Genas' tactical class magicians, those proficient in the Interference System are the fewest. Yet Riesel had 5th grade compatibility in the Interference System, making him almost certain to excel in it. Though not as common, some magicians still use Interference System magic as an auxiliary means, like your friend I mentioned earlier. But magicians with 5th grade compatibility in the Interference System are indeed rare. After saying that, Yuri began to understand what Riesel had said earlier. He had indeed used special means to successfully cast that tactical class magic, which burned her residence. After all, his 1st grade compatibility in the Transformation System was the lowest among all compatibilities. However, during their time at her residence, the tactical class magic he cast was clearly fire magic from the Transformation System. With Riesel's 1st grade compatibility, casting tactical class magic that required 5th grade compatibility was impossible. This proved that the tactical class magic he had used before was not cast through normal means. Realizing this, Yuri breathed a sigh of relief. Sure enough, Riesel hadn't deceived her. Besides reaching 5th grade in the Interference System, your Control System is only at 2nd grade. Though not high, I still have Control System magic I can teach you. Yuri's mood instantly brightened, her face bearing a smile. Having 2nd grade compatibility in the Control System might make learning my Control System magic a bit of a stretch, but still, this is my specialty. So, what do you think? Do you still want to learn from me? Riesel didn't say anything in response to her question, he simply looked at her with a smile. Seeing his smile, Yuri also smiled, then quickly reached out her hand and placed it on the compass in front of her. Decomposition. After her voice resounded, a fluctuation of magical energy suddenly appeared in her hands, becoming visible to the naked eye. The fluctuation resembled a vortex spinning in her hands. When it touched the compass, something incredible happened. The compass began to decompose, not shatter, nor destroyed, but entirely broken down into 3 parts: a gem, water, and a wooden plate. Upon seeing this phenomenon, Riesel's eyes widened as he seemed to realize something. Could it be a chantless magic? Yes, Yuri's magic was actually a chantless magic. Not an ultra-short chant, not a short chant, not even a long chant or an ultra-long chant, but completely without a chant. This is decomposition magic, the magic I use most often and the one I excel at the most. Yuri's voice slowly echoed. Everything has its structure. If you unravel this structure, you can decompose these things into different substances, returning them to their original state. That's what decomposition magic is all about, instantly permeating the interior of an object and unconditionally breaking it apart, causing the object to lose its original function and form. Studying decomposition magic to the end will allow you to decompose all substances, even to the point of changing them to nothing. After saying that, the purple vortex in Yuri's hand became more intense. At this moment, Riesel felt an extremely dangerous aura emanating from it. Soon, Yuri gently pressed the purple vortex onto the gem, water, and wooden plate. The next moment, whether it was the gem, water, or wooden plate, they all disappeared into nothingness. They had been decomposed to the point of non-existence, even their very existence had dissolved. Understanding this, Riesel's mind had only one thought. This time, I've hit a jackpot. Chapter 112, Imaginary System. Decomposition Magic. A magic that could unravel the structure of any object, rendering it devoid of its original function and form, even transforming it back into nothingness. Riesel almost instantly grasped the terrifying nature of this magic. Especially as the purple vortex intensified in Yuri's hand, he sensed a dangerous aura emanating from it, stimulating his survival instinct. It was as if a voice in his mind was desperately shouting, "Run!" The more he stared at it, the more his whole body wanted to tremble uncontrollably. There was no doubt that once he touched this purple vortex, he would surely die, and not even a speck of flesh would remain in this world, directly decomposed into nothing. Is this decomposition magic also part of the control system? Riesel suppressed the trembling in his heart and asked Yuri. That's right. Yuri nodded. All magic that can control and dominate external substances and concepts falls under the category of control system. The essence of decomposition magic is to invade the structure of things and unravel them, which is undoubtedly a form of control and domination over external substances. Of course, since it also affects the body, it somewhat touches upon the realm of the interference system. However, the interference system affects both one's body and others directly. On the other hand, decomposition magic targets substances, with the body being just one aspect of it, not its primary focus. So, decomposition magic still falls under the category of control system. With that, Yuri dispersed the purple vortex in her hand, causing the dangerous aura that stimulated Riesel's survival instinct to quietly dissipate. He couldn't help but exhale a breath, closing his eyes and beginning to remember the magic he had just witnessed. The specific effect of the magic confirmed. The specific manifestation of the magic confirmed. The memory formed. Next. Buzz. As the air trembled, an astonishing surge of magical energy quickly emerged from Riesel's body and gathered in his hand. What is this? Yuri, who had been smiling, suddenly stood up, showing an expression of shock. Before her eyes, Riesel, who was closing his eyes, raised one of his hands. There, a vortex of magical energy began to intensively rotate, appearing in his hand as if it were burning like flames. This scene was exactly the same as when she had just used decomposition magic earlier. So, you really learned this magic? Yuri couldn't believe her eyes. In truth, decomposition magic wasn't as difficult as it seemed. Being able to decompose objects was not wrong. Just like she did at first, breaking down a compass into 3 parts, a gem, water, and a wooden plate was something many people could achieve. Some magicians proficient in the structure system, particularly those involved in crafting magic items, sometimes used decomposition magic as an auxiliary magic. After all, magicians involved in crafting magic items often needed to break down various objects to facilitate further processes. Therefore, decomposition magic wasn't as difficult to learn as it seemed. Even magicians with first-grade control system compatibility could still learn it. However, while learning was easy, achieving mastery like her, who could disassemble the structure of any object and cause total destruction, even reducing them to nothing, was incredibly difficult. At least, as far as she knew, there might be only her on the entire Akasha continent who could utilize decomposition magic to such an extent. After all, the first magic she learned was decomposition magic, so she had a unique understanding of it. Through continuous study, she evolved her decomposition magic to a terrifying degree. In the past, she became a tactical class magician because she had created a tactical class scale of decomposition magic. Even when she became a strategic class magician, it was for the same reason. It was due to creating a strategic class scale of decomposition magic that she gained overnight fame. In this world, there was no one better than her in understanding and using decomposition magic. Thus, her initial idea was to first teach Riesel the most basic decomposition magic, simply being able to disassemble objects into several component parts, then gradually deepen his understanding, spending 1 to 2 years to refine his decomposition magic. Eventually, even if he couldn't use tactical class or strategic class decomposition magic like herself, he could push his decomposition magic to the limit of combat class magic. For a magician with second-grade control system compatibility, such achievements would be impossible theoretically. But she had some expectations for his so-called stroke of luck, thus she had this idea. Who would have thought that in just a blink of an eye, Riesel completed his study of decomposition magic? Judging by the compression level of his decomposition magic, it was almost identical to when she used it herself earlier. The trembling sensation Riesel just felt, the fear of being disintegrated into nothing in an instant, was now present in Yuri's body, telling her that he had indeed mastered this magic to the same extent as herself. So, this is what he called a stroke of luck? But what kind of luck could lead to such an absurd thing? Her mind was struggling to keep up with reality. However, something was off. You. Why does your decomposition magic feel different from mine? Yuri finally voiced the most pressing question. Indeed, although both of their decomposition magic was at the same level, the nature of the decomposition magic he used seemed somewhat different from hers. The evidence was clear. Yuri's decomposition magic manifested as a purple vortex, while Riesel's decomposition magic appeared as a crimson vortex. His flame-like crimson vortex, to Yuri, felt peculiar. Different. Riesel paused slightly, opening his eyes and gazing at the crimson vortex in his hand. Yuri also looked on, her eyes flickering. Don't move. Shortly after saying that, she raised her hand and used her decomposition magic once more, causing a purple vortex to emerge. She brought the purple vortex close to the crimson vortex in Riesel's hand, allowing them to make contact. In the next moment, something incredible happened. Bzztt. The purple vortex that made contact with the crimson vortex suddenly exploded, being decomposed by the latter. Yes. Riesel's decomposition magic decomposed Yuri's decomposition magic. What's going on? Now, Riesel was truly shocked. On the other hand, Yuri stared blankly at the unchanged crimson vortex in Riesel's hand before speaking slowly, word by word. Imaginary, system, compatibility. Yuri turned her gaze toward Riesel's eyes. You actually have imaginary system compatibility. At this moment, her look at him resembled that of someone observing a super rare animal. Imaginary system. Riesel muttered, his face bewildered. Wasn't it supposed to be 4 major magic systems? How come there's a sudden mention of the imaginary system? What did this mean? Did this mean there was actually a 5th major system aside from the 4 major magic systems? While Riesel's mind was in turmoil, Yuri sighed and began to explain. The imaginary system doesn't belong to the major magic systems, because it's different from any other system, yet it can integrate with any system. She sat down, exhaling deeply. In this world, there is no magic from the imaginary system, but there exist 4 types of magic systems with imaginary names. They are the imaginary transformation system, the imaginary control system, the imaginary interference system, and the imaginary structure system. Now, do you understand what I mean? In response to her question, Riesel simply shook his head. Seriously, he had only learned about the 4 major magic systems today, how would he know about the existence of the imaginary system? Let me explain. Yuri hesitated for a moment. The term imaginary refers to the idea of originally didn't exist, meaning it's a hypothesis or a conjecture. The imaginary system is different from the 4 major magic systems. It has no term of 1st grade, 2nd grade, or 3rd grade compatibility. It's either there or it's not. It's simply a distinction between 0 and 1, with no 10 or 70. In this world, there is truly no magic from the imaginary system, but when using magic from the 4 major magic systems, magicians with imaginary system compatibility often cause unknown changes in their magic. For example, common magic from the transformation system like fire magic, when used, releases flames that burn everything to ash. However, if the user has imaginary system compatibility and releases fire magic, the flames produced won't burn the object, but freeze it into ice. Any magic from the transformation system that can cause such a peculiar effect is what we call imaginary transformation system magic. The precognition system magic I mentioned earlier is also a form of imaginary interference system. Generally, magic from the interference system can only affect something like memory, mind, soul, and other things that truly exist. But precognition system magic affects something vague like future, time, or destiny. In short, magic from the interference system that can interfere with something that originally didn't exist is called imaginary interference system magic. Your use of decomposition magic has now become a form of imaginary control system magic, not only capable of decomposing substances but also capable of decomposing magic itself. People with imaginary system compatibility are extremely rare. Not only is it impossible to test if someone has it or not, but they also have certain peculiarities. Some have 2 hearts, some have 3 eyes, and some are like heteromorphs. In short, they have different body features from normal humans. These body features are something that originally didn't exist in this world. Scholars in the field of magic believe that it is precisely because they have such peculiar body features that they possess imaginary system compatibility. After explaining all of that, Yuri gave Riesel a curious look. Now, the question is, why do you have compatibility with the imaginary system? Do you also possess something that originally didn't exist in this world? Her question plunged Riesel into silence. Something that originally didn't exist in this world? Of course, such a thing existed. After all, he was someone who originally didn't exist in this world. Chapter 113, Frenzel Territory. Later on, Yuri told Riesel that although his decomposition magic had turned into imaginary control system magic, the imaginary trait might not necessarily appear in other magic. Most magicians with imaginary system compatibility only have 1 or 2 magic with the imaginary trait that causes unusual changes, while the rest of their magic remains normal. Yuri explained. She also informed him that this seemed to be related to the compatibility between the user and the magic itself rather than to the magic system. The better the compatibility between the user and the magic, the more likely the imaginary trait would appear in that magic. Judging from this perspective, Yuri believed that Riesel's compatibility with decomposition magic should be high. Even though his control system compatibility was only 2nd grade, the compatibility between decomposition magic itself and him was irrelevant to magic system compatibility. Therefore, Riesel's decomposition magic had become an imaginary control system magic, but the rest of his magic might not necessarily follow suit. To prove this point, on the same day, Yuri also taught him several kinds of magic. They included transformation system magic, interference system magic, and structure system magic, not limited to control system magic alone. It wasn't until then that Riesel realized that although Yuri specialized in the control system, she was not ignorant of magic in other systems. Even though my compatibility in other systems is only 1st grade, considering their usefulness in battles and daily life, it's beneficial for both me and other magicians to learn some magic from other systems. Yuri explained the reason. She also gave examples to him, such as the battle he experienced in the Frenzel residence before. At that time, Riesel was ambushed by people sent by the Basalo family. During the fight, he was subjected to various kinds of interference magic by one of them. Interference system magic, which could inflict negative statuses and effects on others, generally required another interference system magic to dispel if one got affected. Another example was barrier magic, similar to the one that enveloped the Frenzel residence. If someone was trapped with barrier magic, they would need corresponding magic to break free from the barrier constraints. This kind of magic usually fell under the interference system. Because of this, every magician would learn some interference system magic to prevent being secretly attacked and ambushed with this kind of magic. On the other hand, magic from the structured system could also be handy in many situations. For example, when facing environments with spreading toxic gas and lacking appropriate protective gear, it would be necessary to use structure system magic to create an emergency gas mask. While on the move, items like ropes, blocks of wood, knives, or iron could all be created using structure system magic. Since the difficulty of creating them wasn't high, mastering this magic would naturally be a good thing. Transformation system magic had even more uses. It could start fires, produce water, generate electricity, summon winds, and even repel insects and track targets. Learning these kinds of magic would always be helpful. Yuri took various factors into account and mastered a variety of magic from different systems, leaving Riesel with the impression that if this woman were stranded on a desert island, she would thrive until a ripe old age without any problems. Thanks to this opportunity, he learned various kinds of magic from her. Though they were insignificant, they could be useful in times of need. Learning them was quite reassuring and better than nothing. After learning various kinds of magic from Yuri, Riesel tried each one as she had suggested. True to her words, unlike decomposition magic, none of them turned into imaginary system magic. Apart from that, the 11 magic he learned from the world of Danmachi remained unchanged, retaining their original effects and appearances. Currently, among the magic Riesel had mastered, only decomposition magic had transformed into an imaginary control system magic. His other magic had not undergone any changes. This left him with a faint feeling. Magic that can transform into an imaginary system magic is probably only the magic learned in this world. Magic he learned in other worlds shouldn't be affected by his imaginary system compatibility. However, even if he were to learn the magic in this world, it remained uncertain whether another imaginary system magic, like his decomposition magic, could emerge. Well, if it's not there, then it's not there. After some consideration, Riesel decided to let things take their course. At least, after his decomposition magic became imaginary control system magic, not only substances but even the magic itself could be decomposed. This change was undoubtedly very pleasing. Such a powerful magic could already be used as a trump card. Most importantly, decomposition magic was chantless magic, able to be activated and released at any time in an instant, which further increased its practicality and convenience. Since I have mage and have accumulated a lot of mag, as long as I can skillfully use this magic, there's no reason I can't enhance its power and range of effects in the future, right? As long as he kept growing, kept leveling up, his decomposition magic would eventually possess destructive power on a tactical class and strategic class scale. As he thought like that, Riesel's regard for decomposition magic was already above that of Ariel, another overpowered magic. Ariel was an enhancement type. Decomposition magic, however, was an offensive type. Riesel's mind was already teeming with various ways to use decomposition magic, making him eager to try. Fortunately, he had enough patience and didn't lose his sense of reality. He temporarily set aside issues concerning decomposition magic and focused on learning various useful magic as well as magic theory and knowledge from Yuri. Knowledge is a magician's greatest wealth. Only with sufficient magic theory and knowledge can a magician go further. Adhering to that principle, Yuri taught Riesel theories and knowledge of magic quite diligently. As she claimed before, she was indeed a quite strict teacher, and if it weren't for Riesel's good memory, he might have had trouble keeping up. This was how he spent 3 days traveling on the ship. 3 days later, the ship finally entered Frenzel territory, entering the northern region. This place was forever winter, with very low temperatures. Throughout the year, one couldn't get by with anything less than winter clothing, as even in autumn, it was too cold without them. It was said that the first half of the year was relatively warm, while the second half was snowy throughout. Hence, half of the year in Frenzel territory was always a white snowfield. Yuri's timing for this return was quite apt, as it was currently the first half of the year, so there was no snowfall. When it snows, the river freezes, and as a result, ships become unable to navigate. When that happened, everyone had to switch to horse-drawn carriages, spending quite some time before they could return to Frenzel territory. Finally, the ship arrived at the city where the Frenzel family's main residence was located, Undine. It was a city of moderate size but held significant geographic importance. If Yelovaya was considered the capital of all Genas, then Undine was the capital of the Frenzel territory. While not as bustling as Yelovaya, it exuded an exotic charm, serving as a major trading hub where merchants and caravans conducted business or passed through, making it quite lively. The Frenzel family's main residence lay in the heart of Undine. "We've arrived, my lady." Anne and Ian, who drove the carriage, were the first to disembark and helped Yuri out of the carriage. Marilyn followed closely behind Yuri, step by step. Riesel was the last to disembark, catching sight of a huge manor resembling a white castle. "Is this the main residence?" Riesel murmured. "Let's go." Yuri beckoned everyone to enter the manor together. However, this young lady didn't seem at all like a child returning home after a long absence. Her expression was cold, her gaze sharp, devoid of any joy of returning home. Her demeanor was more akin to entering a battlefield than returning home. Nevertheless, Yuri's return drew quite a crowd. "Welcome back, my lady." A steward bowed at the entrance. "Welcome back, my lady." Many voices, neat and tidy, rang out in tandem. At the entrance, on either side of the steward, many people stood, forming two lines along a long red carpet, bowing respectfully in the direction of the carpet. Among these people were knights and maids, roughly numbering around 100 or so. The grandeur they displayed was quite luxurious. Unfortunately, Yuri didn't even glance at them, proceeding forward along the red carpet. Only upon reaching the entrance did she finally stop and speak. "Where's my father?" Yuri's voice was exceptionally cold. "Ma master just happens to be out of the house." The steward hurriedly approached, his voice filled with nervousness. "Not here," Yuri quipped. "Did he run away?" That. Cold sweat dripped from the steward's forehead. Yuri unleashed an unpleasant aura as she glanced at the steward. "Tell him I need to speak with him and I need him to come back immediately." The steward looked visibly troubled. Upon seeing his reaction, Yuri had only one thing to say. "If he doesn't want to come back and talk things out with me, that's fine." Yuri suddenly smiled. "But, don't blame me for doing something irrational later, just like in the royal capital." Her words and smile, devoid of any hint of warmth, made the steward's legs go weak. What exactly happened in the royal capital had already spread, and of course, the steward was aware of it. Now, seeing his lady return unharmed, he felt both relieved and apprehensive. There was just too much information to process, leaving him no choice but to speculate. I will inform the master to come back as soon as possible." The steward could only speak up with a stiff tone. Upon hearing that, Yuri continued walking. "I've invited my schoolmate to come over, so prepare the best room for him." Leaving behind those words, she quickly entered the manor. Marilyn, Anne, and Ian remained silent throughout, following her footsteps. Watching all this, Riesel's heart secretly trembled. What a queen! Yuri was truly a scary woman when angry, no doubt. Chapter 114, The Youngest Child. The main residence of the Frenzel family was remarkably similar to their secondary residence located in the royal capital, Yelovaya. Whether it was the layout or the decor, there wasn't much of a difference between the two, the only distinction was that the former was larger, appearing more luxurious. The main residence also boasted a vast courtyard, complete with 2 pavilions and much more upscale landscaping compared to the secondary residence. There were 3 fountains in this residence, rumored to be custom-made using magic-related technology. Even during the snowy half of the year, they never freeze over, continuously spouting water with a constant flow. After spending about an hour in his assigned room, Riesel couldn't resist and made his way to the courtyard. Along the way, he encountered many maids, servants, and guards, even several knights. Each of them respectfully bowed to him, displaying better manners than those in the second residence in the royal capital. However, to Riesel, this wasn't just a matter of distance, it was an excessive display of formality. Did Yuri grow up in this kind of place? He couldn't help but think he had discovered the reason behind Yuri's peculiar personality. Living in a place like this year-round would undoubtedly make one feel suffocated. He had never been to the Frenzel family's main residence and didn't know what it was like here before, but now that he was here, the atmosphere in this place was undeniably heavy and solemn. Formerly fallen noble, hey. Thinking back on the history of the Frenzel family, Riesel shook his head and headed toward a pavilion. He wasn't here to practice swordsmanship. Although he hadn't trained with his sword during the 3 days on the ship or the day traveling from the royal capital to Trintia, totaling 4 days, he couldn't help but feel a bit itchy. But right now, instead of focusing on swordsmanship, he wanted to focus on his magic. Of course, Riesel still brought his wooden sword, leaning it against the side. If things went smoothly later, he planned to practice with it again. Decompose. Riesel muttered as he raised one of his hands. Soon, a crimson vortex emanated from his palm, causing the surrounding air to tremble and convulse. He gazed at the crimson vortex in his palm for a moment before suddenly directing it off to the side. Boom! As the crimson vortex surged forth like a flash, it unexpectedly slipped from his hand, crashing onto a nearby rock and blasting it into a cloud of smoke. Sure enough, decomposition magic can still work from a distance. My hunch was right. Riesel sighed with relief. The ability to launch distant attacks would directly determine the practicality and versatility of decomposition magic. If it couldn't be cast from a distance and required physical contact to take effect, its utility would be greatly diminished. However, there was no need to worry now. Just as Yuri said, as one delves deeper into the study of decomposition magic, its versatility becomes exceptionally high. It can not only be used for long-range attacks but also various aspects. Riesel remarked inwardly, and once again, unleashed decomposition magic, creating a crimson vortex. However, this time, he didn't raise his hand, nor did he concentrate the magic in his palm. Instead, he released it from his entire body. Instead of a crimson vortex, this resulted in crimson waves enveloping his entire body, giving him the appearance of being engulfed in flames. Crimson waves, resembling tongues of fire, danced around his body, creating an impressive and magnificent spectacle. Unfortunately, such a spectacle came with a price. Crack, rumble, rumble. After a while, successive rumbling sounds rang out. These sounds emanated both from his body, shrouded in decomposition magic, and from beneath his feet. Soon, his clothes began to tear and disintegrate, followed shortly by the ground under his feet, which dissolved and disappeared. Crap! Riesel hurriedly ceased the use of decomposition magic, preventing further disaster. Looking at his now tattered clothes and the two connecting craters beneath his feet, he felt a sense of guilt. Fortunately, he had deliberately restrained himself from exerting too much power, otherwise, he might have gone naked, and there would have been more than just two small craters on the ground. Since decomposition magic didn't affect the user, Riesel had been careless, thinking that experimenting a little wouldn't hurt, which resulted in his current sorry state. If it was him in the past, he would need to sneak back to his room to change clothes, apologize to Yuri, and ask her to send someone to repair the ground. But now? Not anymore. Riesel placed a hand on his body, recalling the original appearance of his clothes in his mind before using a certain magic. The next moment, with a flash of light, his tattered clothes miraculously repaired themselves. This was a structure system magic he had learned from Yuri, capable of creating clothes. First, he used magic to create fabric, then he modified it midway to shape it into clothes. Finished with his clothes, Riesel pressed a hand onto the floor and activated another kind of structure system magic. This magic was used to create stone materials, following the same principle as before, creating them halfway and then shaping them according to the impression in his mind, thus producing stones of different shapes and sizes. As a result, the ground was also repaired by using magic, restoring it to its original state. No wonder Yuri didn't seem to care at all when her mansion was burnt down. With magic like this existing, wanting to rebuild a mansion would be easy if one disregarded any concerns about the amount of magical energy needed. This world is quite interesting. Riesel gained a deeper understanding of the magic in this world. Although the magic in Danmachi was diverse, it was mostly magic closely related to combat and adventure. In there, people never used magic in their daily lives, they only used it in battles and adventures, which seemed impressive. Nevertheless, he felt that the magic in this main world was on the right path. Regardless of the type of invention or the power of the magic, the ultimate goal was convenience, enabling people to do more things more easily. This world's magic had already shown a tendency to be integrated into daily life. With such development, a civilization with advanced magic technology was bound to emerge in the future. So, what's next? After Riesel repaired his clothes and the ground, he turned around, ready to continue studying the application of decomposition magic, when suddenly, "Are you the man elder sister brought back?" A very unfriendly voice suddenly interrupted Riesel, breaking his train of thought. Riesel frowned, turning back to look at the source of the voice, but upon looking, he saw nothing. "Where are you looking?" "Down here." The unfriendly voice began to show irritation, directing Riesel's line of sight downward, toward his own feet. Finally, he saw the voice's source. It was a little boy. He was about a meter tall, looking around 7 or 8 years old, dressed in very luxurious clothes, his face full of pride, resembling a scion of a major noble family. "And who might you be?" Riesel was taken aback and began to ask. "Rude!" the boy shouted at him. "When meeting a noble, commoner should bow. Don't you know this common sense?" "Well, I do." Riesel blinked his eyes. "But isn't it also common sense to be polite when talking to adults? Don't you even know this?" "You have a point." The boy suddenly realized, immediately straightening up his body. As he was about to bow his head, he suddenly came to his senses, stomping his foot in irritation. "Wait! You're a commoner. I'm a noble. You should be the one who bows to me, not the other way around." "So, who are you then?" Riesel ignored the boy's frustration. "You say you're a noble. Are you from the Frenzel family?" "That's right." The boy raised his head proudly. "I am Isaac Frenzel, the 5th son of the Frenzel family." Upon Isaac's self-introduction, Riesel remembered the situation at Yuri's family, as she had told him before. According to her, her grandparents had passed away, while her parents were already separated. Her mother returned to her home and took her elder sister along. It had been about 2 years since they last visited. In this generation, there were a total of 5 children, 2 sons and 3 daughters, with Yuri being the 3rd child. Yuri had an elder brother who was 4 years older and an elder sister who was 2 years older. Her elder brother stayed with her father, while her elder sister stayed with her mother. There were also 2 younger siblings, a younger sister and a younger brother, with the younger sister being 3 years younger, now 14 years old, and the younger brother being 8 years younger, now 9 years old. It was quite obvious that the little boy in front of Riesel was the 9-year-old younger brother. 5th son, hey. Riesel couldn't help but murmur to himself. So, this boy is the youngest then. Youngest my ass. Isaac suddenly seemed as if he had been pricked, starting to jump around and shout in anger. I'm not the youngest. What? Riesel exclaimed, surprised. Does your family have more younger siblings? Hey. Isaac's voice became hesitant, but he still answered in a roundabout way. My parents are still young, having 2 or 3 more children is definitely not a problem. In other words, this Frenzel family's youngest child believed that he had a few reserved younger siblings. Oh? Really? Riesel narrowed his eyes, saying with no hint of politeness. But aren't your parents separated? Is it even possible for them to have more children? No. Ugh. Isaac immediately had a constipated expression, wanting to refute but unable to, feeling extremely uncomfortable. Not long after, tears began to well up in his eyes. Brew, you can't be serious. Riesel's eye twitched slightly. Is this brat about to cry? Just as he was thinking like that, Isaac somehow held back his tears. You rude guy. How dare you bully me? You leave me no choice. I challenge you to a duel. Isaac shouted angrily and gritted his teeth. His declaration echoed in the silent courtyard for a long time. Riesel fell silent, while Isaac still had a teeth-gritting appearance. After a while, thud. With a fist knocking on Isaac's head, the so-called duel came to an end. I win. Riesel calmly withdrew his fist, his expression tranquil like a still lake. Way. The 5th and youngest child of the Frenzel family finally let out a loud cry. Chapter 115, Future Brother-in-Law? Isaac's magnificent crying eventually caused a commotion within the Frenzel family. Upon hearing the cries, the knights rushed over, each one taken aback to see Isaac holding his head, squatting in front of Riesel, and sobbing uncontrollably. Young Master Isaac! Someone attacked young Master Isaac! Quick! Surround him! Without hesitation, the knights drew their swords, encircling Riesel and assigning a few to protect Isaac. Charge! The leader of the knights immediately ordered, ready to lead the charge and capture Riesel, but, just as an unnecessary conflict was about to erupt, a sudden voice stopped everyone in their tracks. You shall not be rude to my elder sister's guest. With that rebuke, all the knights came to a halt. Riesel also lifted his gaze, looking toward the source of the voice. Walking briskly from the manor's gate was a figure of a young girl. She bore a striking resemblance to Yuri, with bright silver hair cascading down her shoulders, swaying gently as she walked, giving off a sense of standing tall against the wind. However, unlike Yuri's ever-changing demeanor, sometimes innocent like a child, sometimes cold like a queen, and sometimes elegant and noble like a noble lady, this girl's expression was overly serious, her gaze too stern, giving off an impression of early maturity. Young Lady Medist. Seeing the approaching girl, the knights one after another kneeled on one knee. Elder Sister Medist. Isaac, who had been crying heavily, abruptly stifled his tears, as if he had seen something terrifying. The girl, known as Medist, reached Isaac and showed a severe look. Isaac, what trouble are you causing now? Medist asked with a severe tone. I am not causing trouble. Isaac shook his head like a tambourine, then pointed at Riesel, complaining and arguing. It's all because of him. Before he could finish his sentence, however, she slapped his hand away from pointing at Riesel. I don't recall teaching you to point at guests. Medist glared at her younger brother. It seems you need to retake some etiquette classes, Isaac. Make sure to free up some time tonight. No, please, elder sister Medist. Isaac cried out loudly, tears streaming down his face once again. A man isn't allowed to cry at the drop of a hat. Medist said mercilessly. Can you still call yourself a member of the Frenzel family by acting like this? All right, you must clear the schedule for tomorrow night too. Upon hearing that, Isaac rolled his eyes and collapsed to the ground, feigning unconsciousness. Ignoring her younger brother's play acting, Medist turned to Riesel and gave a nod of respect. Sorry for this inappropriate display. She spoke with her tone now notably different from before. It wasn't stern or harsh but rather carried a sense of openness and grace. Her manners were impeccable, neither too formal to make Riesel uncomfortable nor too casual. It was evident that this etiquette was honed through rigorous training, showing her dedication. You're Yuri's little sister, right? Riesel finally spoke, his voice softening a bit as he looked at the seemingly mature young girl. Greetings, I'm Medist Frenzel, the fourth daughter of the Frenzel family. Medist nodded reservedly. Our family head, Yuri Frenzel, is my elder sister. And this boy lying here is my younger brother. Sorry for the trouble he's caused you, I'll make sure to give him a strict lesson and make him apologize to you later. At the mention of a strict lesson, Isaac, lying on the ground, couldn't help but twitch involuntarily, followed shortly by trembling, resembling someone trapped in a nightmare. This made Riesel cast a slightly sympathetic glance at the boy on the ground, but it only lasted a moment before he withdrew it. Truthfully, this boy was too arrogant. While it could be attributed to youth and immaturity, displaying such an arrogant demeanor at such a young age made him wonder if this boy might grow up to be a spoiled brat like those Chinese young masters in wuxia novels. So with that in mind, he decided to bully the boy a bit, perhaps to let him experience some of society's harsh realities and understand its complexities. However, witnessing Medist's stern attitude toward Isaac, Riesel realized he might have been worrying unnecessarily. With an elder sister like her, if this boy still managed to become a spoiled brat in the future, he would actually be impressed. Nodding inwardly at Medist's stern attitude, Riesel smiled faintly before responding to her apology. No need for apologies. Young Master Isaac is right. I'm just a mere commoner, so a noble like him doesn't have to apologize to me. Please, young Lady Medist, just educate him properly. Then I'd rather apologize. Isaac, lying on the ground pretending to be dead, roared in his mind. Unfortunately, Medist couldn't read her younger brother's mind. I will. Medist nodded earnestly as if she had taken on a sacred mission. But please don't call me young lady. You are the guest of the family head, my elder sister. So, please, just call me Medist. Is that okay? Riesel asked with a raised eyebrow. I'm just a commoner, you know. It doesn't matter if you're a commoner or not. Medist shook her head. You are considered a valued guest by my elder sister, and so far, you're the first. In that case, we cannot be disrespectful to you. Upon hearing that, Riesel understood. This fourth child of the Frenzel family, Medist, seemed not only intelligent and attentive to etiquette but also deeply respectful of Yuri. No, it wasn't just Medist, Isaac, the youngest child, was the same. Otherwise, why would Isaac immediately question whether he was a man brought back by his elder sister? Upon closer inspection, his unfriendly tone at that time did indeed carry a hint of jealousy. Could it be that this boy, out of admiration for his elder sister, imagined that she might be taken away by a bad man, and out of jealousy, came to pick a fight? If that were the case, Riesel couldn't help but think that this boy was much cuter than he had imagined. But... You said I'm the first guest Yuri has ever brought home. Riesel raised his brows. Yes. Medist confirmed without hesitation. There have been plenty of guests who came to visit her on their own initiative before, and they've been treated well by her as well. But it's the first time she has brought someone home like this on her own initiative. As she spoke, Medist couldn't help but sneak a glance at Riesel. When she first found out that her elder sister had brought someone home, especially a young man, she was equally surprised. But after the initial shock wore off, she became intensely curious about this man. What kind of man did his elder sister bring home? Could he be her future brother-in-law? If so, that wouldn't be too bad. After all, this man looked pretty good. Despite being a commoner, he showed no signs of subservience or flattery when facing a noble. He remained calm throughout, even managing to subdue Isaac, who was quite a troublemaker. This kind of composure surely indicated competence. Since her elder sister said this man was her schoolmate, it meant he was a student at Spriller Academy. Being able to attend one of the top 4 academies in the Akasha continent, suggested he had significant potential as a magician. He might even have the potential to become a tactical class magician. Once a magician reached this class, they would immediately be recognized by the royal family and become a noble. Even if he were just a minor noble like a viscount, not comparable to major nobles like the Marquis family of Frenzel, given his young age, it wouldn't be difficult for him to earn merit on the battlefield and be promoted to a count later on. Moreover, once he became a count, he would be a genuine major noble, only one rank below a marquis. With such qualities, he could be considered suitable for her elder sister. At this moment, Riesel was unaware that he was being analyzed and evaluated by Yuri's younger sister, whom he had just met, with even his future prospects being considered. If Medist hadn't concealed her thoughts well, Riesel might have suspected that he was being treated as Yuri's secret boyfriend, being judged and evaluated by her family members. He simply silently took note of Medist's words, gaining a deeper understanding of Yuri's oppressive life at home. Yuri, who seemed to enjoy chatting in front of him like a friendly lady, really seemed to have no friends. Riesel sighed inwardly, then turned his gaze to Medist's face. In that case, I'll just call you Medist directly, and you also don't have to use honorifics with me. I don't like that kind of formality. Okay. Medist wanted to refuse politely, but seeing his calm gaze, she paused and softly agreed. Since it's your request, I won't be formal anymore. She was not only intelligent but also adept at reading people. Riesel's evaluation of Medist rose another notch. Meanwhile, on the ground, the pretended dead boy was quietly squirming, evidently intending to leave this troublesome situation behind. Isaac. Medist calmly and composedly spoke. Yes. Isaac straightened up instantly, as stiff as a bamboo pole. In his eyes, his elder sister seemed like an executioner. Clear your schedule for the night after tomorrow as well, understand? I understand. At this moment, Isaac felt the urge to run away from home. In the next moment, a maid suddenly appeared and quickly approached the three of them. Young Lady Medist, young Master Isaac. Master and young Master Cephas have returned. The maid informed respectfully while bowing her head. Unexpectedly, after the maid finished speaking, the somewhat relaxed atmosphere immediately shifted. Isaac fell silent, while a gloom passed over Medist's face. I understand. Medist said with her head lowered. We'll head over right away. After saying that, she flashed an apologetic look toward Riesel. No need to worry about me, just go ahead. Riesel said, nodding with a gentle smile upon noticing her expression. Medist apologized briefly before leading the hesitant Isaac away. Riesel watched them leave, lost in thought.
Thanks for listening.